Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the featured track of Global Azure 2021. My name is Rick Hepworth. I'm a regional director and an Azure MVP. You might remember me from previous Global Azure broadcasts last year. I'll be your host today, but I'm not alone. I'm joined by the marvelous Annie. Annie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Very much a welcome from my side as well. And yes, I'm Annie. I am a cloud native marketing manager. And most recently, I've been working for Microsoft. But just of today, I've switched to Cast AI as a product marketing manager. Very excited and really great to be here with you today in the featured track of Global Azure.
All right. So many of you will know that Global Azure is something that's been going on for very many years now, and it began as an umbrella for physical events, in-person user groups, meetups around a common theme, all to celebrate Azure. And it was originally a single day, and it grew and it grew. And then last year, unfortunately, with COVID and the changes in the world, we couldn't do that physical event. So we tried a virtual Global Azure last year, and we thought it went really well. We had over 300 speakers worldwide presenting content all on a single topic across 3 days. And we'd got a featured track, like you're watching now, that ran slightly different content, more curated content on each of those 3 days. And it was so successful that even though the world has not returned to normal, we still wanted to do something this year, and we thought we'd run Global Azure itself as an entirely virtual event and see how big we could make it. So, Annie, how big have we managed to make it this year?
Really, really big, I have to say. It's looking really marvelous, and we've kicked off already. And this is the kicking off of the feature track, so very excited for that. We have over 500 speakers, over 500 sessions in over in 6 continents exactly. So really, we have gone really big this year. A lot of interesting and great content happening. And I will quickly soon show you around a bit on the website, as well as the worldwide sessions that are super important and exciting. But today, since you're tuning in to the actual feature track, we have really great content coming up as well here. So we have everything from first off, we will kick off soon with surviving microservices. Then we will have a session called On the Couch with Barry. Really interesting coming up. I heard that there's going to be some security topics there. Looking forward to that very much. And then we also have a really great, exciting session by 2 speakers on mentorship and how that can provide really a lot of value. And then we have a really quick message from Azure Latin America, which is I'm really looking forward to hearing how their Global Azure has gone. And then we actually have a really interesting session on cloud advocacy in a virtual world. Really ties in nicely with how we've gone virtual with Global Azure as well, and how that can provide a lot of interesting talking points. And then we have a really cool session about Azure Portal. And in all of the sessions, including that one particularly, we have a lot of Q&A format in the sessions. So we really encourage you guys to send in your questions, interact with us as well as the speakers, so we can get everyone talking, and it's not just going to be me and Rick here all day alone here. So really excited to hear your questions and comments as well. And then really we will finish the day off with Adrian with understanding durable functions session there. So that's going to be really great. And that's kind of the feature track in a nutshell. And I'll just quickly showcase you what happens if you check out the website and you want to see what other things are going on. I think the feature track has a really strong program this year. But if one of the topics doesn't interest you, you're more interested in another topic, or you just have more time on your hands to watch. So really highly recommend. So you can see here, globalazure.net. Here you see some of the numbers that I was talking about, and then you see the faces of our lovely speakers. And in here, you would see the amazing content from Microsoft Learn as well as Reactor. But that's already on. That was on yesterday. And in here, you see the feature track that I was just talking through. And then tomorrow we will actually have the highlights by me and Rick, recapping what has happened so far. So really looking forward to that as well. And then here is the bread and butter of Global Azure. So all of their worldwide sessions. So in here, you can see anything from, you can select by languages, levels, communities. You can join the streams from here. So much content to browse through. As I said, over 500 sessions, over 500 speakers. So really, I don't think you will run out of content or time, especially. So there's a lot of content to see, a lot of content to check out. Highly recommend checking out, and that's globalazure.net to see more.
And not only can you watch, but we'd like you to join in as well. So on our YouTube live stream, if you enter questions in the chat, they can get passed through to us, and time permitting, we can try and relay those to the speakers. You can also find us on Twitch this year, which is new, something we're trying out. And again, push your questions through Twitch and they should make their way to us. And finally, obviously, we're on Twitter. Follow Global Azure, use the hashtag Global Azure, join in the conversation, try and throw questions in. We've got people hopefully monitoring Twitter and again relaying stuff to us. And we'd also like you to join in. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to see who you are. You'll have seen a little while ago, Carl, who's producing this session, tweeted out that he got his mug of coffee ready and was about to prep for the live stream. And I did the same. If you tweet pictures of your mugs with the hashtag mugs of Azure and the hashtag Global Azure. And then we've got 5 physical swag boxes, which are a mix of real stuff and digital badges and things. And what we're going to do is at the end of the featured track live stream, we're going to have a look at the people who've been asking the best questions and engaging the most on Twitch and Twitter and YouTube. And we're going to look at the best mugs of Azure hashtags, and we're going to select 5 winners. We'll let them know, and then hopefully we'll be able to announce those on the recap show tomorrow. So get your cameras at the ready. I want to see what your beverage of choice is. I want to see what your mugs are like. You know, I want to see you, the audience, joining in and talking to us. And with that, I think, Annie, we're about at time, aren't we, for our first guest on this featured stream?
Yes, I think we are perfectly on time so far. Yes, very much a welcome to Michelle. Really lovely to have you here. Just as a quick intro to you, but I will let you introduce yourself, obviously. I believe that you're joining us from San Diego, and you are really experienced and currently the CIO and co-founder of Soliance. So really excited to have you here, and welcome to the stream.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Actually, nice to see anybody. So, yeah, good morning for me.
So, Michelle, you're, I think, here to talk to us about microservices, aren't you? And pitfalls, I presume, things to do to make microservices an easy thing to implement?
Easy. That's a loaded statement, I think. Well, when I was asked to join you today, you know, I guess one of the things that came to mind is, you know, what do you do day to day now with, you know, this past year, especially, right, being remote and just, you know, really we're so lucky, right, to work in this industry where things are still very busy, I think, for many people. So it's fortunate, but I think the downside is, of course, we have too much to do. And a lot of that is just the, you know, companies that are still focusing on their transformation from, you know, on-premise to cloud, for example, right? And trying to maybe improve their overall architecture position, maybe lift and shift, maybe encapsulate and erode monolithic code or things that are you know, difficult to advanced business features, deliver quickly, rapidly, you know, business value acceleration obviously is a big goal for folks these days, right? To be competitive and stay competitive. So definitely that's the thing that's near and dear to me in almost everything that I do as part of our business. So yeah, that's kind of the topic we chose.
Cool. So I mean, obviously I'm not as experienced as you, but I do a little bit of cloud consultancy here and there. I encounter microservices quite a lot as a term that my customers throw at me, but they don't necessarily know what it is they mean by microservices. How about maybe you could kick us off with a definition of what you think microservices is, and maybe a little bit of a contextual description of where you think it's an appropriate approach to take?
So that what's interesting about that is I'm sure everybody will describe microservices slightly differently because you read a lot about it from different perspectives. So my view of the whole strategy around microservices is really that you're trying to be more agile and focused with everything that you deliver to your overall solution, right? So the number one thing I feel like people are trying to achieve with microservices is acceleration, and also remove complexity of the intertwining aspects of a typical system that you may have built in the past. So when you think about microservices, do you think typically about breaking down business capabilities? You know, how do we break down this whole organization into groups of functionality that people can focus on as a team? And that sometimes is just a few small things. You know, when I think about a typical company, right, you're going to have an area that's focused on identity because everybody has to deal with identity, and that's a domain, right? That's a business capability, and many things go under that domain, like membership and account management and credentials and single sign-on, right? That whole space. And then you'll also have whatever your business is about, right? Is it products and orders and fulfillment? You know, is it insurance and policies and memberships and events, or investments? It could be any number of things. So at that point, now we're into your business domain. But breaking it down at that top high level starts to help people focus, and then you get these groups together to further break down. How do we look at it from a business value, business functionality, business capability within that domain? And then you start thinking about the microservices that support that. So all that's very abstract. And you can do a straw man of the high level up front to help guide the business, but you're never going to break down every single domain into all of its microservices in, upfront, right? That's not extremely agile. So at some point we have to take that high level view, that, domain taxonomy, if you will, and start turning it into what are the things that we're trying to deliver now, right? What are the most impactful things we can accelerate to deliver value to the customer, obviously gain revenue, help the business to operate and succeed. And so, within each domain, there will be priorities, and you'll have folks that are prioritizing which thing will deliver the best value. So now we need the technical way to get that done. So we have to think about what's our platform. Are we, net new cloud, maybe an Azure foundation, and we're, tearing things out of the on-premise? Are we connecting to on-premise directly from the database perspective with an express route, for example, to be secure? Or are we thinking about maybe APIs at the on-premise that we will communicate with to extract and bring maybe system of interest into the cloud, right? So there's that concept as well. And then the other is obviously to just move system of record into cloud for compartmented areas within a domain. So there's all these different strategies that will come up, but they need a platform to operate on, right? You need a architecture strategy for each of those things and others. And I find that, you have to go into it with what is the requirement of the business: compliance, regulatory, security, separation of duties. All of those things can be very important for setting up your platform. So I've seen companies where we do a lot of platforming up front with proof of technology approach, where you take a few business value gains and deliver those, but you spend the majority of the year on just building out this, amazing platform that you can deliver quickly to. And you get your patterns, your practices, your Azure DevOps, CI/CD, all the security, analysis that goes into the pipeline, delivery to, let's say, AKS, right? understanding what do we need inside AKS for general compartmentalization, authorization, security, access to data, access to on-premise, getting all that baked, your network routing, how you get all that into, say, Terraform or ARM and deliver quickly and get these patterns going so that when the next group comes and you start fleshing out all these domains, you can land it quickly because you've built these patterns. So that's like an extreme level of specificity that you might handle upfront to ensure that you can go fast later, right? But I've also seen the other side where, there are organizations out there that are, embracing agile to the point of maybe each team gets to choose their own technology. So you've got, maybe a little bit of healthy chaos where some folks decide they want to use API management and functions, and then others are, using AKS to deliver. And others are using app services, and they're really deciding based on their domain and what they're trying to deliver and what their team knows how to get it done. So the benefit of that is acceleration, rapid delivery, but you reach a point after that where you actually need to take a step back and say, okay, something unhealthy is going on now. Everybody's, firing events and they're saying, I've got a topic, you can consume it. And I've got another one and you can consume that. And there's no overall overarching architecture, supervision, or governance, right? So I've seen that happen where that's healthy in the beginning and becomes chaotic. So now we have to reverse engine or, take a step back and try to build that platform and those consistencies and those practices and that governance. And I'm saying a lot of things here because I guess there's different experiences that, over these years, our company is involved with. And I think both has its value and it's sort of cultural within the organization. Do you want to, kind of prevent lessons learned up front and get those platforms and practices done up front and take longer? Are you okay with that as a business? Can you fund that? Or do we need to see acceleration, quick value delivery, use paths as much as possible, get things done, and then turn it into, the governance that you need after you've seen all that value and gained the initial business lift you needed. So,
yeah, really interesting, and it makes a lot of sense and a lot of insight. So do you commonly find that development teams need to change their practices to successfully build and maintain microservice architecture? And what are those changes truly?
When you say, do they need to change their practices, do you mean, are you sort of pointing at what I stated around, lessons learned and what do you want to do now? Certainly that can happen. I think that folks can learn, for example, I've worked in some organizations where we've, set up, AKS clusters, and you've got all of your platform, well-defined, and, traffic manager, front door, WAF, AKS, backend, Cosmos, SQL, depending on the microservice domain, communication with events, communication with on-prem, and you have all these moving parts, and you've built these practices, but then you start learning as you bring new teams on that maybe not everybody is picking up the practices as well as another, right? So it's harder for them to, follow, how do I stand up a new ASP.NET Core API in this platform and instrument it, put the telemetry that's needed, put the API management tooling, standards around the API contracts, let's say, integration with database, patterns and practices that help you do it right and securely to reduce the need for code reviews that might surface, more problems. And so when we run into that, actually, one thing that's been really successful has been using CodeGen. So using like a Swagger CodeGen tool and building mustache files that actually output the initial ASP.NET Core foundational host and the models that match the contract. So you build your YAML contract up front, you do an API contract first approach to your microservices and generate foundational code that actually fast tracks new team members as you're building, many, many microservices across many teams, hundreds of developers. So very large organization style. this becomes really beneficial because now your telemetry is in place, your API security is in place, the standards around things that people don't all know, and you're trying to get them some lift off. So that's one lesson learned that I think was advantageous in organizations that are really large. Another example would be sometimes it's just nice to stand up a function, right? And maybe we don't always need that single pane view of all of our, domain microservices within, the container monitoring window, if you will. Maybe not every single thing needs to be, a container, right? It could be we're moving into, some functions just, we have a standard for managing our functions. Maybe that is putting it behind API management. And that helps you with some standards there to at least make it, again, manageable while still being agile, right? You need patterns so that you don't have complete chaos and everybody's just doing what they want and flicking things out there. But that doesn't mean we always have to do everything one way.
Okay. So everything you've been talking about so far, Michelle, you've mentioned sort of several teams working together. Everything sort of felt like this is a large organization solution. Is Microservices an approach that's really aimed at enterprise, aimed at those huge software solutions with lots of moving parts, or is this something that scales down as a good practice to smaller shops?
It scales down. Obviously the interesting problem to solve is the very large organization problem, because that's where you need more discipline, more governance, more structure around your practices to allow for visibility to leadership about the health of the whole system, right? On both the platform side and the business delivery side. And that's extremely important, obviously. But when you think about, in general, microservices, we're really talking about breaking down your problem. So if I have a smaller product, I might only have 1 or 2 domains in there, right? And at the end of the day, I'm essentially really just breaking down problems into, usually API contract first is a good way to look at it, right? I need this set of functionality. I'm going to expose it through APIs, and I'm going to build some UIs in front. Maybe I have one UI in a smaller organization, and that one UI talks to all the APIs, and I'm done. And, that's my whole system. So now we got to think about productivity. So in a case where it's not a huge organization with, 20 million users, maybe I can just manage that with app services, and, deliver it with a container could be helpful in app services, just because then locally you've got this development, this containment of all the dependencies of the service that you're running, the API or the UI. But at the end of the day, again, I'm leveraging paths wherever possible so that I have less to manage, in general from an operational perspective. And I can focus on making my logs better, making my security story better, building great dashboards to visualize health, right? And get alerts when something's down. So I can, remove some of the other overhead by leveraging paths all over. And Azure is extremely, good at paths.
True. There's a lot of power in Azure paths, definitely. So continuing from there, is microservices synonymous with containerization, or should the two be viewed as separate things?
They're really separate things, right? So microservices is more of a discipline, a set of practices around how you define business capabilities and, isolate the components that deliver those business capabilities so that you can update this capability without affecting that one. And therefore those teams or those individuals can in parallel be operating and delivering quickly when needed. So imagine those times when you have a large monolithic application and everybody's afraid to touch that one line of code because they don't know all the places it's touched, right? So a lot of times when we do migrations or transformations of a code base, that's the number one problem, is either the code is no longer known or understood by anybody, or it's the one person that understood it left the company. or, it's understood, but nobody really knows the whole picture. So we have to now figure out all the touch points so that we can actually make the transformation toward a microservice architecture. So the idea is that by breaking it down into those smaller, delivery components, you no longer have that complexity. So complexity is the enemy of security. Complexity is the enemy of productivity and handoff. And it's the enemy of what happens when that person that wrote that beautiful piece of code that was so, sophisticated is no longer there. That theme is probably lives in many things we do, but with microservices, the theme is at the component level, that we need that manageable amount of work that is, demystifying what am I doing here and make it quickly to deliver. And then, how I deliver it, if it's in a container or in a function or, in a controller, like an API app, doesn't matter, right? It's still isolation, that logical isolation.
So I was smiling because there was a picture of Magnus popped up there, who's obviously lurking in the live stream questions. That's really
Hi,
old.
Magnus. Nice to see you too.
Without his lockdown hair. So, Michelle, one of the things you were talking about a few minutes ago, and I think that sort of connects nicely to what you were just saying about people leaving, dealing with legacy code. You mentioned governance, and I see this a lot where organizations don't necessarily think about governance until it's too late and the horse has bolted. You said as one of the ways that organizations could tackle microservices is that they could, if you like, be quite agile and then retrofit some of those patterns and practices. How do you balance that effectively with the need for enough cloud governance to make sure you're not just building a bigger rope to hang yourself with?
So that is a cultural thing per organization, and that has to come from leadership. If leadership enables all the teams to be autonomous and choose what they like, that will grow until somebody says something's out of control here. And maybe that's okay, because the point that you reach that, maybe you now have a data problem down there, right? Like there's just a mess of things going on and nobody's really tried to tie it together. Or maybe you have a messaging problem where, this thing we thought we were doing for eventual consistency, where all the systems were up to date, it's been not well planned. So we're finding that things aren't quite as consistent as we want. Those are big problems to solve. So you're right. If you don't catch that early enough in the game and start planning for where do we want to land from an overall standardization perspective and overall target architecture perspective, if you don't have that vision, that target, you can get into a mess to where you have a bigger problem to solve and everybody has to assemble around that one problem until it's fixed. And now we can start fresh, right? I don't know how to tell people not to let it get there, because again, it's cultural. You have to have people that are working in the teams that care enough outside of the work they're just doing. And this is a bad habit I always had, which is I'd be owning this area of work, but I wanted to understand everything. So I would try to figure out, how does this come in and who are all the folks that call this? And then I would care about the UI or about some other experience and start asking questions. So if you're curious, right, you tend to know more about overall things. And then you're the one that might be the person that learns something's not working out here. I think we have a potential problem. So then you can be the one that raises that, to other architects, other team members, and your voice is heard. The other way is obviously leadership realizes we've got a problem, and they are, obviously in tune with the fact that we need a strategy, right? So, most good leaders will realize we need a strategy, and they'll balance strategy and investment in that with delivery of business value quickly to ensure that, the business is meeting their commitments, whether it's, large company meeting commitments for Wall Street so that, your stock stays at a level, or whether it's just meeting commitments to customers because that's going to keep you in business, as a smaller business.
Sorry, I'm trying to type questions for Annie, and you've beaten me to it. Okay, I'll ask you myself. So, so when you're looking then at organizations and they're starting to talk to you about their requirements, what are the words that you listen for that make you think, this is probably a good fit for microservices, or no, wait, this isn't a good fit for microservices? Are there sort of, I don't know, dog whistles, to use not a great phrase, that let you latch on to where it might be an appropriate approach?
So I don't know that there are trigger words for we need microservices. I think that if you're a solution or enterprise architect, and you are working with a company on what they need, you don't really lead with, we need a microservices solution. You lead with, what is the business solution? What are the domains and capabilities, regardless? So you might argue that's something everybody should do anyways. It is a thing that's tied to microservices in terms of conceptually, that's where we hear that discussed the most. But imagine every solution needs to have this compartmentalization of functions and functionality, business capabilities again, right? So that you can put teams behind it and focus behind it. And, again, business value for the customer ties together with that. So you're going to do that anyways. What I'm listening for more is, how do we accelerate your delivery of things the business needs to the market? So I look for what kind of, I guess, tolerance the business has for investing in a foundation. If they have tolerance and dollars to invest in that foundation, and they can keep their existing wheels on over here while you build the net new foundation for moving new over, right? Moving system of record over here into the cloud, let's say, by building these, microservices that start solving problems. So think about a net new features, fit for purpose UIs and APIs that connect data that was in the old legacy system and start moving system of record to cloud. Typical strategy. So we're looking for what's going to give the business the greatest value. And we're looking for what areas and domains is the business comprised of, so that we can figure out what are your priorities, because you can actually do prioritization of the domains. And that's something we typically do with the microservices, larger strategy approach, right? Right up front, you look at business domains, capabilities, and then you prioritize them. So that way, if we're doing a long 4-year migration, which domains do we start with first that will give the business the most impact? I probably didn't answer your question, though.
No, you did. And it's interesting. Sorry, I off on a tangent again. But so often, customers start with, I've heard these buzzwords, I think we ought to be doing this. A consultant has said we should do. And as a practitioner, sometimes that worries me. And it's like, okay, well, let's go through your needs and requirements and let me validate that. And oftentimes, simply helping those customers with it. If you hear this, then you should think this. If you hear this, you should think this. I think that really helps sort of level set. Annie, you've got a question to ask, though, I know.
Yes, there's a really interesting discussion, and I think we all can go a bit of on a tangent, but really happy to ask a question as well. So what is a typical solution for embracing microservices usually? So specifically, there's a major struggle on understanding the domain in terms of software architecture. So what is the best way to embrace a microservices-based architecture, considering the natural desire developers have to over-centralize data, configuration, and even the business logic?
So I think what that question is trying to say is, how do developers get engaged in understanding how we isolate business capabilities so that we don't lead towards that, single monolithic database at the back, or code base? And again, this is often not driven by the developers. If the organization has architecture, leadership, there's going to be a combined team, right? You need the DevOps people, the developers, the the, architects, and you need business owners that understand the stakeholders and the customers. That's the full team for a microservice domain. So if you're, trying to understand how do I avoid building that monolithic backend, it really does still start with understanding if we compartmentalize these business capabilities, they can own their own data. The other standard would be a microservice always owns its own data. What does that mean? It doesn't mean I'm going to have, one shared platform infrastructure, probably for, event hubs and, AKS and SQL paths, for example, right? And Cosmos. What I'm going to end up doing, though, is the actual tables or possibly database instances are my isolation point for, I own this data. So if you think as a developer around, identity, I do a lot of work in the identity space, has its own set of data that it cares about, right? Users, relationship of users to external identity providers, maybe a small light profile, MFA, credential profiles, things like that. And it has APIs for user management and self-service UIs for set my password. And then it's got, login and SSO. So that's, a domain capability and a small set of microservices, but the bundle, right? And that may, share one backend because they could be looked at as a unit of delivery. And then you'll have membership, like my accounts in the system. And so often identity links to accounts, but that's like a separate concept. So I'm going to have my own tables for that, and I'm going to relate that to a user somehow. So that's just a relationship between two domains referentially. But, I own my own data over here. Accounts should not blend over here. So I only have one credential profile, but maybe I have a membership profile over here with my address and my contact and my membership details for that company, whatever the business is. And if I think that way, now I can isolate my data and my backend, and I can isolate my API contracts and the ownership of those things. And at that point, now we get into, I can have developer teams architecting those individual areas. And now I need a solution architecture picture and team that understands how they all go end to end. Because at some point, the front is going end to end. I might have shared UIs with pieces that go to each domain. I might have, integration stories that traverse these APIs. So I need to understand, the data prep needed for testing that and how does it relate to each other and so on. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, really a lot. I think there's 2 questions from the audience. Let's see if we have time for both of them, but let's start with one of them. So in a microservices-based architecture, does the team end up becoming micro too?
It does. You usually do have domain teams. So, let's think of a Scrum team as being a domain team. Some domains are big enough to have multiple Scrum teams for that domain. So I have some large organizations I work with where we have right now, 2 dedicated identity domain teams because identity is big. And then maybe there's, 3 on this other domain and 2 on this other domain, right? Again, large organization, lots of product considerations and capabilities. So that's one way to look at it. But then I have other companies where it's like 1 team per domain. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think we just have time for the last question from the audience. Oh, there's even more coming, but let's start with that one. So since you mentioned DevOps, are you suggesting that devs should now be responsible for infrastructure as a code and become more OP in a way, or that ops should then become more developer-like?
I think that it's going to depend, obviously, but what you should have for security reasons, typically, as well as separation of duties, if you need that in your org, is a platform team that sets up the foundation, right? Traffic manager, AKS, Azure WAF, SQL in general, like the setup for disaster recovery and high availability and, multiple regions, and all of those things are set up by the platform team. But your domain team needs to have the ability to Terraform or ARM deliver, into, that platform. So I need to know how to deliver my API service in a container with the right, pipeline to put it into AKS and have the correct key vault, service principals, managed identities that can call to the right database and so on, right? So I have this, vertical slice of things that I own as a domain developer or team, and I need to deliver it to a platform that has set some standards and gates for security and platform delivery. So in a more formal environment, those would be two isolated things. And then what you have is, again, reusable practices that hopefully mean a pipeline's up in a day, right? I've stood up my host for the API container with some code gen in, an hour or two. And now I'm just talking about business value from there. What are the actual designs and schemas and things? So what I would expect is that the whole domain team can monitor that and own it in production. That's the way that most of the organizations today are working, because you can't scale understanding how to fix problems in production. You need to be the team that owns that code, which means you can't just put it on the SRE and have just one SRE responsible, right? Everybody on the team should learn a little bit about how to monitor, look at Azure App Insights, end-to-end trace values, dashboards that help us understand what's going on. Every time you solve a problem, look at it and say, what logs or alerts could have helped me with that? Let's build that now. Or what dashboard would have shown me that more easily? And if you're always looking to that and improving as a team, then you can monitor that yourself. So ideally, everyone is a bit full stack there, but there is some limit, right? Everybody won't be an Angular developer or a React developer. And maybe those folks aren't ASP.NET Core API developers or Node.js developers. So there's going to be skill sets, right? But you should all be able to at least deal with the post delivery into Azure. What do I have out there? How do I understand it's healthy? Everybody should understand that so that you can help out.
For sure. I think it's good that everyone can help out whenever necessary. So a quick shout out to Luna, Gus, Magnus, and Andre and Alex who have asked questions. So much appreciated. Love it when people are engaging with the session. We have 2 minutes left. Do you, Rick, think that we have time for the last question, or should we kick to the next speaker? How do you think?
I think if Michelle can try and answer that question quickly, it'll be very interesting.
The pressure's on.
Yeah. So, all right. So, and I'll thank Alex for this. The Global Azure Pixies are feeding his questions from the back, which is great. Microservices lend themselves nicely to APIs, being used with APIs. But do you see microservices implemented in front ends as well?
Well, it's all part of the domain. So you will have microservices and APIs, those are the core business functionality. It's true. But you still need sometimes micro UIs that are, fit for purpose to a particular area. So I'll give you an example. Some organizations have 200 spas and they're all subdomained or routed. And that gives the team autonomy for building their little piece. And then there's a common header, right? And common functionality around it. And some folks like to do the monorepo approach to delivering that, although that's got a lot of complexity and it's hard to do well. So if you don't really invest in it, you can do that really badly. So I usually recommend we don't do that. Each of those, again, micro UIs are part of the microservice domain and business capability they're part of. Another way to approach it is you do that for some things, but other things could be a combined platform application that have areas that are owned by teams for their business capability. And they deliver it so that it kind of stitches up into a platform team's owned delivery of the application as a whole. So it's kind of one host, but your piece could be tested individually and then stitched up into that host. So I still look at it like micro UIs in the sense, that's just part of keeping the business capability owned by the team that understands that business domain, right?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, our time is starting to be up, but it's been super interesting, and thank you so much for speaking and visiting us here at Global Azure Stream. It has been very lovely, and thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, perfect.
Really appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Yes, thank you so much. Then I think we're gonna.
So some of you might have noticed that I've been trying not to corpse on camera for about the past 10 minutes. And the reason I've been trying not to corpse is because the marvelous Barry Dorrans has arrived. And yes, Mr. Charisma has been chucking one-liners in the chat.
Would you like to repeat them?
So Barry seems to struggle with the fact that I look like Gandalf the White.
No, you
genuinely like prog rock, Barry.
You look like a Walmart version of Gandalf the White.
I'm not sure how to take that one.
Rick the Rouge, perhaps.
I could live with that one. I could live with that one. So let me introduce you. We're very pleased to be joined by Barry. Barry is, I believe, you're the .NET security czar.
Oh no, that changed ages ago. In the global address list at Microsoft, it has .NET Security Curmudgeon as my job title.
Okay, so would you like to explain to myself and Annie and the viewers at home what .NET Security Curmudgeon actually does for a living?
I am paid to be grumpy. I am paid to be grumpy and say no to absolutely everything, and then try and figure out a way to say yes in such a way that things will be secure by default, and easy to use and keep secure, so that developers don't code themselves into an insecure corner.
So I know that you are the person that we know and love for writing all those little advisory notes about .NET.
Not anymore. I managed to con someone else into doing that. But yes, I did write them for years, and then I'm like, I am so sick of this that that's now part of the release process, and the release team own writing the bulletins, and then I just sign off on them.
So are you still involved with the .NET Bug Bounty program?
I am. That is mine. I have a checkbook, well, a virtual checkbook, which I absolutely adore. So when people report security bugs in .NET and .NET Core, not .NET Full Framework, but .NET Core 2.2 and upwards, I can write them checks depending on the severity of the bug and the type of the bug. I actually wrote one a couple of days ago for someone that had reported something that, whilst it wasn't exactly a security bug, we were lacking in validation and the documentation was a bit pants. So in .NET 6, we'll be adding some more validation so they can't get themselves into the insecure hole that they were in. We beefed up the documentation, and because it's caused a change in the product and because it caused change in documentation, I get to write a check.
So when we invited you on, Barry, I know you said, well, I'm not quite sure what I've got to do with with cloud. Michelle was just talking about microservices when we were chatting to her, and she was talking about writing microservices in .NET Core. She was talking about using .NET as a development language for Azure Functions, things like that. And .NET Core's, well, the security of .NET Core is your fault, mate, so that's why you're on here. What I'm interested in is, I know, because I've sat in sessions that you've done, that you do spend a lot of time trying to advise developers on what's good practices. I know you have areas of passion, shall we say, about what are bad practices. And I was kind of hoping I could just wind you up and let you go. So what
you want me to run?
do you see often as bad practice that you'd like people to avoid? So
what we made one major improvement in .NET 5, in that in web applications, you cannot use binary formatter anymore. Binary formatter is a very old serialization technology that is horrendously insecure, and we cannot make secure. We can't make secure without breaking all of its compatibility. So we're just like, okay, you have better options for serializing stuff, use those. The problem with binary formatter is its insecure deserialization method, because the payload takes the names of the objects that it wants you to create along with it. So if there are fun objects in the framework, and my favorite one is the temporary file collection, you could spit that into binary formatter, deserialize, and delete random files on disk. Web.config is my favorite because that brings down SharePoint, which always makes me giggle. And so, you know, we have documented for years that, you know, when security stances change on certain classes or certain types of things, and with the best will in the world, no one ever reads the updated documentation, or indeed the original documentation. And we're now being a little bit meaner about it. So if you try and use binary formatter in an .NET 5 ASP.NET application, it will throw. If you need it for compatibility reasons, you can opt in to insecurity, which is basically how we look at it. And there are just a bunch of other things that provide no security value or provide negative security value that we are trying to do away with. Secure string is another good example. It was supposed to be a way of keeping secrets in memory securely. It's not cross-platform in any way. It didn't work well within web applications or indeed within microservices. The only thing it ever worked well in was WinForms apps, where you were trying to log in and type a single character at a time, and you would append that to a secure string. And that's just not the world we're in anymore. And for secure string to be any use, it eventually ended up getting converted back to string. So you had all of this overhead and no real benefit, because your secrets would end up in plain text in memory anyway. And so we're looking at deprecating that and replacing it with a class that just is almost a marker class that is supposed to prevent accidental disclosure of things, so you don't log them. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to log it. And we're like, okay, you know what? If you want to keep things out of dump files, then you secure your operating system better. You turn off the dump file capability on the operating system, and that actually closes an awful lot of holes, not just within your application, but within all sorts of other processes that are doing weird things to memory anyway. So, you know, that wasn't really our area to do things in. We tried to do it, but because it was .NET specific, as soon as you tried to then make use of the credentials to go do things like talk across the network, it got converted back to a string, and it's silly. So we're looking at moving away from that as well.
Perfect. And I have to say that there was really, really quickly, we had already some audience questions. So very happy to give one of those. So we had a question in Twitch from Sinclair. Should we
Hi,
use
Jeremy.
yeah. Should we use secure string in ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core like we do in PowerShell?
And yes, I saw that one scroll past. So no, we shouldn't be using secure string in ASP.NET or ASP.NET Core, because a lot of the things that you are loading it from, either you're loading your secrets from a file, which isn't the best place to keep them, in which case the file is the problem, not the current memory running process. Or if you're trying to take passwords in your ASP.NET application, which you shouldn't do, you should hive identity off to something that's dedicated towards identity. Well, they're coming in an HTTP request. They're being processed as an HTTP request within the ASP.NET pipeline. So these things are in plain text already. And there's nothing we can do to stop that. That's just the architecture of the web. So we avoid secure string in web applications, in microservices, as much as possible. And like I say, eventually we want it to go away.
Makes sense. And I think we have so many questions from the audience coming up. Do you want to, Rick, take the next one?
Sure.
I can. This is Jeremy versus Barry at this point, so I could just relax, lean back, and let them argue it out. You know.
Tins, Jeremy, that's for you.
So for the audience who can't see the next question that Jeremy was asking, it's a question about patches. Is it safe to deploy the .NET security patches in production automatically?
I think that varies on what your definition of safe is. We have become better at not introducing breaking changes in patches. We did it at the start of the year for someone that had a really strange edge case in things that they were doing in SQL, and that again was around binary formatter. And we had to work with the customer over a number of weeks to try and figure out what the heck was going on. But you can uninstall a patch and roll back to a previous version if things are going horribly wrong for us. And I would remind everyone that if you have bugs in security patches, you can log an issue with support. They'll take your credit card number, but when I tick a box that says this was due to a security patch, you get your money back. I would honestly like to get to the point where people always update automatically, but I think it depends on your risk and your own risk analysis. How much do you want to risk a patch going wrong? Like I say, it doesn't happen very often, but in all honesty, it will happen. That's just the nature of things. And sometimes we actually deliberately break you because we can't secure things. For that sort of thing, it's usually an optional patch that we then force 6 months later, so you can actually go test things. But again, no one ever reads the documentation and no one will ever test the optional patch.
Perfect. And I have to say that the Jeremy bombarding continues, but we do have questions from other people as well coming up. But yeah, let's get
Jeremy
to the next.
Full of beans this morning.
Yeah. So the next question from Jeremy is, what's the best practices for server-to-server communication when it comes to passing identity?
I think these days, especially with a microservices architecture, we hive off authentication to something else, whether it's Azure Active Directory or whether it's Identity Server or whether it's ASOS or something like that. We let a identity be its own domain, like Amanda was indicating. And so you would then have the service authenticate to your authentication server and get an identity for itself. And then that's how you would pass around identity in a server-to-server way. So you have the server identifying itself, so you know that it's able to act on behalf of someone. And there are OAuth flows for acting on behalf of people that you can quite easily plug in with all the standard libraries. But the important thing is to make sure, of course, that you are also validating that the service itself is able to call the other service, not just that the identity is able to be passed through.
Tom, I'm going to override some of the Sinclairinator incoming questions now. I've got one of my own, which it's more of a broader one, Barry. So you're almost as old as I am. So we go back to sort of pre-internet days, and it was easy.
I think I'm probably older than you.
Yeah, you're weathering better.
That's true, but it's because my hair isn't as long, so you can't see the gray.
So I'm genuinely interested. So, I mean, public cloud is this great democratizer, right? Everybody can now go and mine Bitcoin in other people's data centers. How has that democratization affected what you do in the security space? Has it made it harder? Has it made it better? Has it made it easier?
I think the fun thing that giving people all that power and giving people the ability to spin up web apps and other types of applications with little to no thought about security is the patching problem. There was for a while a bunch of marketing from various cloud providers, which were, you migrate everything up to the cloud and it's automatically secure. That's not generally the case. I mean, if your application is bad and insecure, being on the cloud is not going to magically fix it. In fact, it's probably going to make it worse because it's exposed to an awful lot more people. Whilst we have SaaS offerings like Azure Web Apps who will do the patching behind you, an awful lot of the lift and shift stuff is taking what you used to run inside your own data center or inside a cupboard inside your office and shoving it in a VM and putting that VM up in the cloud. And the VMs still need patching. Because people don't want their VMs to automatically reboot because they like their uptime, and so people just don't plan for that sort of thing, unfortunately. I mean, plus because we have more exposure and more things that are publicly available, the speed to patch something after it has been reported to us or after we have discovered it is a lot shorter, because there's there's a much larger chance of something being exploited, and cloud data centers and with all their powers starting mining bitcoins or starting trying to denial of service attack other sites off the net. So we want to get patches out as quickly as possible, which is why you will see sometimes 3 months of .NET Core patches one after the other. The move to open source and the move to hosting, putting our source up on GitHub also perhaps slightly increases the risk. There's an argument that the more people that are looking at things, the more secure they are. But then you look at an awful lot of security bugs in OpenSSL or things that are in Linux that haven't been discovered for 20 years. People don't look in the right places, or people don't have the skills or the point of view to look at things for potential security exploits. So I'm not convinced that the mini eyes things actually holds true. But because we now have things in GitHub, and because we don't ship .NET as part of Windows anymore, we're not beholden to the patch cycles or even to the life cycle of Windows. So we can retire old code quicker. We can ship patches every month a lot faster. We can now patch things within a couple of days, because we're not having to push ourselves through the Windows compatibility testing that they have, which is incredibly large, because of course they don't want to break customers, and they have you're able to run code from 25 years ago, implicit promise on Windows. With .NET Core, we're not saying that anymore. We are saying that we will support things. LTS releases, I believe, are 5 years, or no, 3 years. And after that, you need to move. You need to bring yourself up to the latest version in order to be secure.
Perfect. And then we had another question, this time not from Jeremy. So we will get to maybe Jeremy's questions later, but first we have another question. And maybe we could combine it with another question also. So there was a question from Alice, or more of a statement, that she would like to have a session of Barry ranting about various things he's seen developers do. And then I got a hint that maybe a reject or something would be good for that. Yeah.
I have a few of those. My favorite session to give at conferences is going through, like the last 5 or 6 Patch Tuesday events, and going through the code that was behind those Patch Tuesday events, and then talking about how we messed up, and how it can then apply to your own code. So you can go to my website, which is idano.org. And there are some streams of those. There's some streams and some examples of the exploits in action, including one around binary formatter, which is my favorite because it pops up. I get to pop up images. I think the last recorded stream for that was in Australia, and the image that I popped up using binary formatter was a picture of England winning the Ashes, and you can hear the audience boo because Australians take cricket very seriously.
So would you like to comment on your known passion for regular expressions, Barry?
I think passion is not the right word. I think hatred is the right word. Regular expressions have caused common denial of service attacks, especially in web apps, because people will take untrusted input like something that someone has typed into a form and feed it through regular expressions. Regular expressions that have backtracking in them means that the regular expression will run multiple times. based on what the input is. And it can be quite easy to craft, if you know what the regular expression is, it can be quite easy to craft input that will cause the time taken for that regular expression to exponentially grow and take up more and more CPU. And if you do it enough times, eventually your website comes down. There is a way to around this, which is you put a timeout on your regular expressions, but then you have to cope with the error case of your regular expressions failing, and people forget about timeouts all the time. So if you must use a regular expression, first of all, I would beg you to reconsider your life choices. You're not going to understand what that regular expression means in 20 minutes after you've written it, let alone 2 weeks. But for heaven's sake, put a timeout on it.
Great, and I think we had a really good question from Alice again as well. Rick, do you want to take that one?
Oh, I see. We've got a division of labor. You read the short, snappy ones, and I read the long, involved ones. All right, fair enough. So, would it be possible for .NET to support some general method of protecting data in a cross-plat way that devs can easily use? Which I think actually is a genuinely good and interesting question. So, Barry, you can read it as well as I can.
Yep, I can. Oh, wow, you're just not doing any work now. Okay. All right, you just sit back and plan the album cover for your next prog rock album. Everything will be fine. I'll take it from here. We've thought about this. Google has an interesting set of libraries where you basically just call protect and unprotect, with no knowledge of the underlying platform, with the underlying algorithms. It is all taken care of for you. We've done that a little bit in ASP.NET. That's how the data protection stack works. You get a protected and an unprotected, and we take care of absolutely everything for you. It's not generally applicable. It's not generally applicable to the other types of workloads. It's really only there for ASP.NET. Windows has been thinking about the same sort of approach. We've been waiting for Windows to take the lead on this. If they end up implementing it, we will quite happily plug into their implementation and then make that cross-platform. But we are not cryptographers. We know enough to shoot ourselves in the foot with crypto on a regular basis, but we have a meeting every 2 weeks at Microsoft of what's called the crypto board, who are just a bunch of people who are even grumpier than I am. A bunch of crypto wizards who will pick apart your code, that will pick apart your cryptography and leave you crying in a puddle. And we would far rather that they come up with that sort of approach. And that discussion has been ongoing for a year or two. It's hard to make crypto general purpose, unfortunately, because a lot of it is quite context specific and a lot of it depends on your hosting environment. It's a lot easier, for example, to protect private keys from certificates in Windows than it is on Linux, because Windows will allow me to put the private key inside the kernel and keep it out of process. In keeping things out of process in Linux, you do it by keeping them in another process entirely, and now you have the problem of cross-process communication and securing that.
Great. So you were an MVP, an active member of the developer community before you joined Microsoft. How important is community engagement to your role?
We have our own little group of developer security MVPs. That used to be a specialization all on its own. And it had some of the identity server guys. It had Kevin, who writes ASOS, and people that were deeply interested in security. And now that's widened. Now that the specializations are not really a thing, you're a developer MVP or you're an OS MVP. And that's quite nice because it democratizes, it opens up the security discussion for a lot more people. But I think what's interesting for me these days is the fact that, I have the identity server folks. I have Brock and Dominic, and then I have Kevin as well, who frankly know far more about OAuth and OIDC than I ever will. And they help me fill in the gaps in my knowledge. They help me point out when I'm doing stupid things. I can ask them incredibly stupid questions. I can also ask these, of course, of the AAD folks internally, but their focus is on AAD. So if I want to, widen out a little bit, if I want to think about identity server as well, I quite happily will lean on the community. I mean, the only problem with it is every time Brock and Dominic are in Bellevue or in Redmond, I have to buy them an expensive steak dinner, and that's just ridiculous. They've never bought me anything. It's harsh.
I feel I need to know how one makes Barry buy you a steak dinner. This is an experience I've not had.
They asked. Well, actually, what they generally tend to do is they will email Scott Hunter saying Barry's taking us out for a steak dinner. So that's my manager's manager. And then I get told, take them out for a steak dinner. So that's how you do it. Rick, no. Not unless you bring me over an awful lot more Cadbury chocolate than you have been doing in recent years, even before COVID. So you can't use COVID as an excuse. There would have to be a lot more chocolate before I would consider putting a steak dinner for you on expenses. We
may have to escalate to Tato crisps then.
Yeah, or bacon fries.
Okay, Annie, have we got any more questions from the audience that you'd like to throw at Mr. Dorrance?
Yes, I think we've had a few more available. I don't think we will have time to ask all of them, but maybe this one would be good. Will we see a built-in way to encrypt or decrypt app settings, JSON, or do we have to still create our own method of doing it?
I would say that putting things that need encryption and decryption in app settings.json is the wrong way to do it. We have better ways for storing secrets. If you are thinking about websites that are hosted on Azure, you of course have Key Vault. Windows itself has its own secret mechanism in the Windows credential store. You don't put secrets in JSON files. You don't put them in plain text files. And if you do that, then you don't have to worry about encrypting or decrypting them at all. So no, there will be nothing coming that is built in, because we believe that encouraging you to do so would be more dangerous than actually trying to solve the problem.
Perfect. Do we have time for another one, or should we start wrapping this one up? How do you feel, Rick?
I'm not sure Barry can really do quick fire questions, although I do have one I need to ask, because I know everybody, all the Global Azure Pixies have been asking, what is this Beans feud, Barry? What's Jeremy ever done to you?
I am concerned about Jeremy's health, and I believe that he needs more fiber in his diet to keep his heart healthy, and I am trying to encourage him to eat healthily.
So that's always good.
Yeah. I care about my community members, Rick. I almost had it.
I've tried so hard not to corpse on camera with you. Thank you for that one, Barry. Annie, does that mean we're about time as Barry goes?
Yes, and I love the discussion from Jeremy coming through as well. But yeah, I think we are about to wrap this one up, and soon welcoming the next speakers as well. But yeah.
So Barry, a big thanks. I know you stepped in at short notice. It's been an entertaining 30 minutes, and hopefully you've proved to all of the Azure developers why they should follow you on Twitter. And
oh no, please don't. No, my feed is full of beans. That's not good for anyone.
But binary formatted questions is fine, right?
Yeah, binary formatted questions are fine. I'll just tell you never ever to use it.
Cool. All right. In which case, thank you very much, Barry. I think we're going to take a very quick break while the Pixies play some title slides, and we've got more guests coming in a moment. Or maybe not.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome, very much welcome. We haven't had the time to yet introduce you. We've had such a great session so far. So maybe we can kick this session on mentorship. I'm really looking forward to this one with you guys introducing yourself and kicking off.
Awesome. So Elena, you go first.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Solana Borzanko. I'm a senior backend engineer. And yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about mentorship in the community. Eldad?
So yes, Oud Grooteboer, live in Netherlands, in Rotterdam, work at Motion 10 as technology lead, I think the title is these days. I'm also Azure MVP, and yes, we're going to talk about mentorship, community, and all that kind of nice stuff.
Yeah. So I think that we can start from how it all started. If you remember, Eldad, how we met one day when we had a nice community call. I guess it was around Christmas time. And it was a Christmas party from Dylan BT. He organized just a call with some couple of drinks on a Zoom. And we joined this. I joined to meet some new people and have some friends around during some holidays. What was the reason for you to join there?
Yeah, so I know Dylan, like I've been talking on several NDC conferences where Dylan always, of course, is involved. He does his whole sessions with, so normally when we did this in person, like he would have his band there. These days, he just like has a band of all the different Dylans, like there's 6 Dylans on stage, which is always nice to see.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just like seeing Dylan again. And of course, I'm seeing a lot of old friends there and meeting new friends like I did with you.
Yeah, I remember when we met first time, we kept talking and we had, we kind of became friends pretty fast. We had a couple of calls during the week after the party and we had a lot of things in common. I also remember that you were quite busy. You had like several talks during the week and like conferences, and there was like almost around the time when you were organizing your own conference.
Yes. Yeah. So of course, with everything virtual these days, it's very easy to go to different conferences in different countries because I'm just sitting here in the same chair anyways. Like with one mouse click, I can go from Austria to New Zealand to Netherlands and back to US. So yeah, basically I've been doing like 3 conferences every week. So I've been quite busy with that. And like you said, I was also organizing Azure Lowlands, which was in January. So of course we were organizing that. Yeah, so we're talking a lot about, okay, so what does it mean to speak? What does it involve to like prepare a session or write an abstract and all those kind of things we were talking about, like what does it actually involve to be a speaker?
Yeah, I remember that I never even thought about becoming a public speaker. I mean, of course, there's like many challenges, like first of all, like confidence, you never know if you are in the right place and if you can actually talk about some topics. I also had some like, as a female in tech, it was, well, I met quite a lot of different opinions on that. So I was like, for me, being a public speaker, it was something like really impossible. Like I would never do this. Like, no, it's not for me. But I remember when you were talking about your experience, I was just getting curious every day more and more. Like it sounds like not just a lot of fun, but being a part of community and have a lot of awesome people around you. And it's also a great thing to share your knowledge with others. And I remember how I was started to ask you like, hey, but how you actually do, like, can you tell me a couple of words? I was just like naturally curious. And that was a point when I got this idea, when this idea started like born in my head, like maybe I should try it. I remember your support from the beginning.
Yeah, so I remember indeed, like at some point you're like, so if I would like to become a speaker, like what should I know? Like, can you tell a bit about this? And so we basically started talking like, okay, so what does it involve actually to, how do you find a conference or something like that? Or how do you know like what kind of session could I submit? And so we basically just started talking about this kind of stuff where I was talking, okay, so what do I do when I start a new session or when I start looking for a conference? And I think at this point, like it was implicit, but I think this is the point where like this mentorship we have kind of started.
Yeah, I remember that you were kind of giving me some ideas, like maybe you want to have a look in this one, maybe you want to try to write some like articles or blog, like you were just throwing ideas into me just to see what I would like. And I really appreciate that you were not forcing anything on me. You were not trying to like tell me how I should do things, but you were just giving me a lot of space and opportunities just to try it out and see how I feel about things. Because I was also like, I had no idea where to even start. I had no idea even that there is a special place when you can like have all your sessions like sessionize, and then like you can submit on the conference. For me, everything was new, and the way how you can write an abstract, how you can find your conferences. It was really great to have all your wise advices on how to start, where to look, how to prepare yourself. It was really great. Can you tell like how it was for you? to have me as a like new and experienced speaker.
Yeah, so for me, it was really about seeing through new eyes again. Like I've been speaking for a couple of years now. I think I've now been MVP for almost 5 years or something like that. So I've been talking a bit before that. So I've been probably speaking for about 7 years or something like that. Of course, when you have been speaking for 7 years and organizing my own conference for 3 years, you start looking at things differently than when you just started. So actually having to go back and look through a new person's eyes, you start thinking about, okay, so what does this actually mean for a new person? How can I make sure that we are inviting as a community? How do I make sure that people can find our conference, that they feel comfortable to actually submit to our conference? So you start looking at things completely differently again, because you are telling me, of course, like, okay, I don't know where to get started. So I'm now thinking, okay, so how can we actually make sure that people know, okay, if I want to get started, I can just contact people, like I can just go and submit a session, because most of the conferences are actually looking for new speakers. But if you are like a new speaker and you don't know about this, like then you have that chicken and egg, like we want new speakers, but if new speakers don't know we want new speakers, then how do we find new speakers?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember that we were talking with you about some cases like in my company or my previous company. I was telling you some stories like, hey, I had this situation or these challenges and so on. And I remember how you first told me like, try to write it down, just try to make a short, like kind of a description of what you did. And we can try to make an abstract out of it. Like if you have a story to share, just try to do this. I remember that was kind of a first step, me kind of getting into like community and speaking and so on, like just getting myself prepared. And I remember that I wrote a really brief, like a brief text, like what actually I was doing in my company. And I showed it to you. And we kind of had a couple of we discussed it briefly, and you gave me a really good feedback how I can improve it, make it shorter, make it more clear. And I'm also what was really cool for me that you didn't edit it, like, you know, you just gave me a couple of advices and you let me work on it a bit longer. And I guess that was the time when we made the first abstract.
Yes. So I think that at this point we also like you said, okay, so I can be your mentor if you want. Like I can actually help you more on this if you actually want to start speaking and get involved more with your community. I think a very important point what you say here, like if you want to become a mentor or if you want to basically take someone under your wing, make sure you're not going to try to make a copy of yourself. Like let the person be themselves, like just guide them. Show them like, okay, I can help you on finding like what is session nice, or I can help you, like I can read your text. What I didn't want to do is like, okay, you should put this in here and then submit to this, and then you have to talk about this. Like, you should find your own way basically, and I should just be there to make that way a bit more paved for you.
That's true. I think that none of us had any idea what does mentoring actually means in terms of community. Like I used to mentor people before, but I was just like teaching them tech, like how to write things, how to write code and stuff like this. And when we started to talk about mentoring, I was like, I had so many doubts. Like I had no idea what does it actually mean. But yeah, of course, let's try it. And I also remember that you sent me a couple of conferences to submit to, like to just have a look if I want to speak there. And I also remember that the first of them was the Global Azure. And that's actually how we got an idea for this talk. When I submitted my conference, my talk to a Global Azure conference, we had this buddy program from Global Azure, when you kind of like officially my mentor. And that's when we started to think how we can actually share this experience, like the mentoring program.
Yes, so actually you mentioned the mentoring program from Global Azure, like the buddy program. And I think Annie and Rick might want to join for this because they know also a lot about this, where they are actually like, as the Global Azure, they're actually saying, okay, if you want a buddy, if you're a new speaker, Global Azure wants to help this there as well. So Annie, you can probably tell a bit more about this part.
Yes, very happy. I don't have any kind of detailed run through, but as you can see from the screen, there's the link that you can find out more and dive deeper into the body program. But really what it is, as you mentioned, Eldar, it's a really great program from Global Azure to really help people find mentors and mentees and really get the community even more running better, smoother, and making those connections there, and to get the power of mentorship. And I do have to say a little bit of a note. There is currently a lot of mentors signed up. So there's a lot of people interested in mentoring, but at the moment there is a need for mentees. So if you are interested in getting a mentor, now is actually the perfect time to sign up, because there's so much interest for those, particularly looking for mentees, which is usually it's usually the other way around in mentorship programs. So this is a rare chance to truly get a really great mentor. So highly recommend to check that out from that link there.
Yes, so because like we were telling, like we ran into each other, became friends, and then we became into this mentorship. But I can definitely think, like, if you are just someone that's new out there and doesn't know about, like, haven't met anyone yet, like, one thing I would definitely say, like, I would say to anyone, always try to go out to these social calls. Like, we are all virtual, of course, so it's different than when we're in person, when you could go to meetups and meet people there. But there's still a lot of social calls going on and virtual meetups as well. Like, just and don't go there just to find a mentor or a mentee, but just to get to know people, I would say. Because even if you're just like getting involved with the community, like, you will run into people that are of the same mind and things like that.
So, Eldar, I mean, obviously the Global Azure buddy system is our attempt to try and connect people who want support with people who are more experienced. You're a conference organizer, so if you can put that hat on for a moment, do you think it's something that conference organizers should think about more, trying to encourage first-time speakers, maybe trying to partner them up with more experienced ones, give tips and help?
Yes, I definitely think that's something that we should look into more. I know there's already a couple of conferences out there that actually do this. Like when you sign up, for example, at Session Nice, where you can say, I would like to have a mentor, or I want to become a mentor. So there are also already some conferences out there. I think we should actually do this more, just to make sure that people that are new just have someone there with them that can just take them to the first steps. And like I said, it's not about pushing someone somewhere, but by just guiding them. If you have any questions, if you're running into something, or if you just are like, I'm not sure if this is okay, can you have a look? That you know there's someone there that can actually help you with this. So I think definitely as event organizers, we should do this more on that.
Yeah, so, definitely. You know, sorry.
I was just going to say, Elena, actually, from your point of view, as a new speaker, would you think about submitting to an event even for the first time without much experience, if you could see that event had got the sort of arm around the shoulder, welcoming approach, and they were going to help you?
Definitely. You know, when I was looking, like, as a developer, I was always interested in the conferences, like to learn some new stuff and so on. And I also remember that I saw so many conferences, like such big conferences with many speakers, and I never saw even the hint of like that they welcome like new people or so on. I'm pretty sure that like behind the scene, like in the community, when people know each other, that somehow they bring in new people, but from outside. For me, as never been involved with anyone from the community, it was just unknown. Like if I would never meet Eldar, I have no idea how would it happen, how I would get into community. Like it was a great coincidence, but from outside, I had no idea how to start. I had no idea how I can understand that I'm actually being welcome as a new speaker, and I was not sure if I can even ask, like, you know. People are busy, people are organizing things, and people are being speakers. And like, can I ask, like, would it be weird if I would just ask, like, if I can be a speaker there, or if I would ask for help from someone? So of course, when I see that conference welcome new speakers and they offer kind of, it shouldn't be help, you know, I don't expect anyone to take me for the hand and just lead me, but kind of advices, like have a look on this. And if you want to prepare your session and be interested for people, there is like a couple of tips, and have a look on those videos, like, because people, like, it's really hard there is a huge process of setting all those things up. So it's really hard if you don't know anything about it to start being a great speaker or even a good speaker from like first time. without anyone's advice. So of course.
Yes.
Really, truly, yeah. Question that's popped into our heads is, do you think it's easier to find mentors in a virtual world or compared to like in-person events where you maybe have more networking things and whatnot available? And maybe as a follow-up question to that is, do you think your mentorship will change when we get back to more of a physical event world, or will it stay kind of the same? Does the mentorship change as far as virtual versus physical?
I will start from the second one because it's kind of a bit easier to answer. I think it's definitely going to change, at least for me. I mean, I think it's not like will be completely different. It will just transform into something else, because this is different set of skills when you speak on a stage. I'm pretty sure. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure. Well, Elliot said it to me, so I believe him. And of course, this will be a different like format of talks and different experience. It's still going to be kind of the same. We also have a couple of talks together with Eldad. So I'm pretty sure besides like being a mentor, we also kind of having our own like talks together. We have to polish it. And in the online format, that's the one thing. We cannot sit together. We cannot just have a brainstorm. We cannot make a rehearsal in person. We have to do everything online. And sometimes it's kind of not really comfortable. I really like seeing people in person because you kind of have more touching points, I guess. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be different. Maybe Eldad, you can also comment on it.
No, so on that point, yes, it will be different. Like there will still be mentorship going on, but it will be on different points. Like when you are speaking in person, like the speaking itself, of course, is the same, but it's more about now instead of sitting behind your camera and you have to think about lighting, or you have to think about the right microphone. Now you have to think about, okay, how do I actually present my on stage? Where like I'm now standing somewhere, I should not be standing still, but I should also not be running around the podium. Like those kind of things, like that will be like you are looking for different things. Of course, Rick does it anyways. Like Rick will be all over it anyways, but
yeah. And the first question which you were asking, like, what's the difference between virtual and real world? To be honest, I'm not sure, because when I was on the personal conferences, I never thought about like being a speaker. I felt pretty free, like to go and talk to people and just to like, make new contacts, make new friends. That was always right for me. But I kind of have a feeling that in person, it would be much harder to have this mentoring program, because virtually we can talk anytime. Like we spent a lot of hours just talking with Eldad about different things. We had a lot of calls before. And I think that in person, of course, you can always like make a contact in person and then like keep this communication in virtual world. But in person, it's also could be hard a bit because when you have a conference and there's like many people around, many things are happening, you would not ask like, hey, can you mentor me, please? Like it would not be a case. So it does require some time to, first of all, understand that, okay, it's kind of a clique, like, the people wants to be friends, people wants to keep communicating with each other. And only after this, the mentoring program might come or not. I don't know. It's all depends. So yeah, it's my opinion. But Eldad, what do you think? What was easier for you?
So I think getting involved as a new speaker might be a bit easier because you're already going to the meetups, and most of the meetups will say, okay, so if anyone wants to speak, come to visit us after the sessions. So I think as a new speaker it might be a little bit more easier. On the other hand, to actually find someone that can actually like help you on this would be a bit harder because, like you said, it's not as easy to just go up to someone, hey, can you mentor me? Like, well, if you're a virtual world, you might just say like, because you're virtual anyways, like you might just chat like, hey, I see you have been speaking. Like, I think the barrier is a bit lower to do it virtually, like you can do it on chat or something like that, which is a little bit lower barrier than actually having to talk to someone and asking this in person, I think. I think there's like upsides and downsides to both of them.
Yeah, at that point, that was a great segue, actually. We want to give a quick shout out to Mirza, who's saying hi from Indonesia. So, Eldad and Elena, you're in completely different countries, aren't you? So, I mean, this is a great example of how the virtual communities that we've had to build in the past 12 months are actually removing those geographical barriers and enabling this. And I know, Eldad, how many countries have you done sessions in the past 12 months that you couldn't possibly have done before?
So I cannot give you a number now, but I've done sessions like in Nigeria. I'm doing session also like in South Africa. Like in Johannesburg, I did sessions. I've done sessions in South America. I've done sessions in Indonesia, Singapore, like countries that you. I'm not saying you would never get there, but it's not like you go there like twice a year or 3 times a year just to give a session at the meetup. And now all of a sudden, like I said, I might have had weeks where I like 4, like even like next week, I have 4 different sessions in 4 different countries. It's not something that most people will do, like when we do this in person. But now, because everything is virtual, we can actually do this. Like you can just go to and just also talk like at small meetups and actually share knowledge there.
Yeah.
You know, I also can say something about this. Like yesterday, I had my first talk, and because it's online format, my many friends from Ukraine, even my parents were watching. Like I'm pretty sure they had no idea what I was talking about, but many people had opportunity just to have a look, and they gave me a lot of feedback afterwards. And if that would be in person, it would be much harder. Like, of course, I will get a feedback and maybe some opinions, and just like I will have people which can be physically there. So definitely having this experience in online format, like first experience, I consider it's a great plus, because it was, first of all, easier because you're kind of in a comfortable environment, you're at home, you have your place, and you have people which are supporting you from all over the world, and you know that they are watching, and you kind of feel a bit more safe. So yeah.
So can I just ask then, Elena, as a speaker who's used to bouncing around and falling off stages, one of the things that I miss as a virtual presenter is I can't see the audience. Like, you're all laughing at me now, and I can see that. That's fine. I always found that great when I was starting out, because you could see faces smiling at you, giving you encouragement. What's it like as a first-time speaker when you don't have that? How do you give yourself the confidence? How do you work out how you think the session's going across? Or is that something Eldert helped with?
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, I love seeing people as well. So every time when I had like anything, like some session talks, or internally in my company, you know, or like previous company, we also used to have some like internal meetups and stuff like this. I loved being around people, because you can see immediate feedback. You can see how they react on you, if they can understand you, or they're like already sleeping and want to go on lunch or something like this. Of course, online format is a bit challenging in this way, because you have no idea how people can follow you. And this was exactly a moment when Eldert as a mentor helped me really a lot, because besides giving a lot of tips how to be a good presenter in online format, like not to wave your hands, trying to control your voice, and like trying to like talk slowly and stuff like this, we also did a couple of rehearsals when he actually helped me to understand how people see me from the side. And this was really great help. In online format, I guess, would be much harder without this.
And do you think that the experience of doing online first has given you more confidence to then do the in-person at larger events later?
I think just because it's online, and you kind of in a comfortable environment, and some people might have a fear of stage without even knowing about this. Like, you've never been on a stage, you have no idea if you're afraid of this or not. So definitely, if you never been on a stage, and you don't know if you will be afraid or not, having online experience might be a great start, because this is environment you are working on. You have those screens, you have camera, you have mic. This is something you get used to. So first time, give it a try. And then if there is a recording, this is awesome, because then later on you can have a look and also understand, like, if you like it, what you did. And I consider it as the easiest start, online format, because I have no idea how would be my experience on the stage. Maybe I will just start to freak out and I'll be super nervous. So I also will need a couple of tips from Eldert, I guess, how to not to run across the stage and not to fall down. So yeah, I think it's a little bit easier. But of course, I will be able to tell more after my first experience on the stage as well.
So as a sort of a follow-up to that, and I know Eldert and I have talked about this before, a few people have said to me, oh, well, we like virtual because it means we can pre-record and we can make sure we do it right. And several other people have said, actually, no, we hate pre-recording because there's all this pressure then of trying to make it perfect. And I spend more time recording my session than I would have done if I'd just presented it. I'm interested in what the pair of you think, which side of that line you sit on, particularly for you, Elena, obviously as a more of a newcomer. Does that undue pressure, is that something that would put you off, or do you prefer doing as live as it were?
Preparing for Global Azure gave me a really good understanding of what I want from my first experience. So we were talking with Eldad, like how it should be. And I said, like, I want to do everything, first of all, live. I don't want to make a recording because this is the real thing. Like, I want to do demo live. I want to do my talking live. And another thing is I wanted Eldad to be with me on this like first time and just like have this few seconds or few minutes interaction when we were being together on the screen, because it's also gives this like, I'm not talking completely to a screen only and to myself, basically to a camera. I also have a live person here next to me, and it's made it easier. So of course, live and demo live and everything live was for me like must have. I mean, it was my feeling that this would be a right thing to do.
Yeah, so I can only agree. Like, I have done a couple of recorded sessions. I don't really like it because you just miss like once you actually on stage live, you're still having the feeling like I'm talking to people and I'm actually doing this. Whereas you're recording, you just know like, yes, I'm just recording this. It will be played in 2 weeks or something like that. I get why some of the conference want it, because it makes it a bit easier for them to make sure that everything is going okay. But as a speaker, I don't like it that much. One thing I do like what you said, like I don't feel the pressure anymore. The first time I did a recorded session, I did exactly what you said. Like I re-recorded it for like 8 times because at minute 25 I said one too many times. So I completely recorded it again. So after the first time, I decided I'm not going to do this anymore. I will just treat it as a live session. I will do one take and just put that in. Because otherwise you just keep recording and keep editing, and yeah, it will just be too much difference.
No,
Annie, maybe you have some of those as well.
Yeah, I have the same exact experience. I had a pre-recorded session recently as well. I retake it like 8 times as well. I did it once in the evening and then once in the morning and once again during lunchtime. It was crazy. There was way too many takes about it. But I do agree with you though, at the same time. I organize a lot of virtual events as well. It's really nice as an event organizer to truly know what all of your speakers will be saying beforehand, because then you can plan every single second of the event very meticulously. So that side is very wonderful. But from a speaker side, it really leads to perfection, kind of, at least trying to achieve perfection. But that's rarely the case.
Yeah, also like yesterday when I had a talk, like I lost my mouse at some point, and I know like if that would be pre-recording, like I would definitely try to take another take and make it perfect. But I also received like comments that it was funny actually. Like I lost my mouse, it was alive, it was live, it was funny. Everyone understood that. Okay, I was a bit nervous, but yeah, I was kind of like honest with everyone. Yeah, this is live demo. I lost my mouse now, and this is what I also like when you see the people are making mistakes and they're not getting nervous about this. They understand what they're doing. That's also a part of the experience, I think.
Yes.
I mean, so how do you find that? I mean, it's great that the audience are chipping in and supporting you. But I mean, the one thing I really struggle with, I'm struggling with it now, there's like 3 chat channels going up either side of my screen as I'm trying to watch you talk to you. How do you find that and deal with that, Elena? Does that work for you? Are you able to sort of multitask?
I am. Well, yesterday I don't even remember how my talk started because I was pretty nervous and it was the first time. So I turned off like all my phones, all my chats. Like I literally had only like Rider where I was showing the code, the browser for like for the streaming, and my presentation. and that's all. And I tried to turn everything off because I knew as a first experience, like all those things gonna distract me. And yeah, I really don't remember how the talk went, like completely, because I was a bit like nervous. But now, like as we are talking, I do see like some like people, the chat is going on and so on, and it's getting easier. And I'm pretty sure that every time it will be easier and easier. And maybe at some point I will be able to present and also respond in the meantime on the comments or stuff like this. But of course, for the first time, I do recommend to concentrate on the talk. And if it's possible to do as we did with Elliot, that he was supporting me in a like behind the scene, he was like trying to respond on the chat and he was trying to help me with other things. That would really be a great start. It will make just easier and more confident. Like I know that someone is helping me, so I can concentrate on the thing I'm doing.
Yes, we are running out of time, but it's been super interesting session. Would have loved to continue discussion. And I think we can continue discussion, for example, in Twitter or anywhere else after this. So
Yes.
very interesting. Thank you so much, Eldert and Elena.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
very
us.
much.
Thank you. And now we will take a really quick break to have a bit of time off, but we will be back soon in about 4 to 5 minutes with the next session. And we are back. Welcome back to the stream, everyone. We have a really great next small session coming up. Rick, do you want to introduce the next session?
I do. Thanks, Annie. So we've given some time to the organizers of Global Azure LATAM. It's a really great to see that they are the largest single community under the Global Azure banner this year. They've got, I think, 62 sessions across all 3 days. They're doing multiple tracks. It's absolutely great to see. And with that, I'm going to introduce, and I'm going to apologize in advance for mispronouncing all of these, Luis, George, and Pastor, who can tell us a little bit about Global Azure LATAM. Chaps, over to you.
Thank you. We are really excited. We are really happy about being here. Thank you for the invitation. Well, my name is Luis. I'm the leader of the Comunidad Xamarin in Español community. And well, along with my friends, we organize an event across different, let's say, countries, because our language is really beautiful and we wanted to take advantage that it is spoken in different countries. Friends, please go ahead.
Hey guys. Well, first of all, thanks for the invite. It's been a great opportunity. And we are very excited because, I mean, as Luis said, this is a joint effort between all the Latin communities. I'm from Nicaragua. Luis is from Mexico. Lautaro, one of my friends, is from Argentina. So, I mean, with this COVID-19 pandemic situation, it's been it's been more easier, to join efforts between different countries, and we shared the passion for the .NET technologies and Azure. So we met each other's because we were, hey, do you know this? Do you know that? And we were kind of talking on Telegram and WhatsApp, and we were, hey, we should organize this. Well, Luis used to organize the last year. I met Luis the last year in Global Azure LATAM, and this time it was a bigger effort. Definitely, we said, hey, this was much better.
Yeah, it's been a great weekend for us here in Latin America. We are having such time with the organization and also with all the conference that we have. As you mentioned, it is more than 60 sessions that we could have. And the important thing about it is that this is in our language. We know that almost every documentation is in English, and now we are having different kind of language. Not too much as us speak English, so it is important to us to generate content in Spanish. And that's the idea when we gathered in a lot of communities across all Latin America in this occasion. To me, this has been the first time we could do that. And we are trying to provide better content for the people that we are.
So I'd just like to ask, actually, all three of you said that we're in different countries. We've managed to pull together our communities. It's really great to see, obviously driven by something that's been pretty difficult for us all. Are you hoping that you can maintain this moving forward? Are we going to see Global Azure LATAM next year still as a big online event, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, this is going to stay for long, I think. Yeah.
We have our first experience with the release of the Net 5, and it was like 4 or 3 communities. But for this event, the Global Azure, we got it in more than 12 communities. So yes, for sure, we'll continue doing this way.
Yes, yeah. I would like to thank some of our colleagues which are actually in the chat. Juan Carlos, Vero, Carla, Humberto, because they are also, yes, Hector. They are from different communities. Some of them are Microsoft MVPs, some other are community leaders, but everyone shared their experience, their knowledge. They helped with the design of the cards for speakers, with the StreamYard, let's say, setup by sending or creating the sessionized, let's say, agenda. We learn a lot, and we are really happy, and we are looking forward to organize other events. Of course, Global Azure stays forever, let's say, in our hearts. So we would like to continue with this.
Yeah. As Jorge said, it's not the first rodeo. That was on November last year, and we hope to keep on working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also to mention that, for example, Spain also have a lot of conference also in Spanish. So I think Spanish is doing well. This is important for all of us. Also to be grateful with all the people that are willing to make those conference. Here we are only the people that are just in the backstage, but the real people that are making this event are those.
And the speakers.
Speakers.
Thank you to all our speakers, because they gladly accepted the invitation to speak, to participate. We even had maybe 20 more sessions which couldn't fit in the event because there were some duplicated topics. In some of them, we gather some speakers, so there will be 2 or 3 speakers in one session. Some of them are workshops. So yeah, we're really happy about it.
Yeah, really amazing. And I'm really feeling the passion for the community and then the topics here. And I'm really loving the discussion from the comments to hear as well. Seems to be a really great passion here and community going on. And on my behalf, as well as the whole Global Azure, thank you so much for organizing such a great event and building such a great community throughout this whole event.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and also to be part of this global event.
Yes, yes.
Global Azure is all about you. It's not about us. It's so great to see such wonderful events like the ones that you're organizing doing so well, right? That's what it's all about.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for visiting our stream. Hope you have a lovely rest of I think there's a lot of still sessions happening and a lot of activities going on, so we don't want to keep you too long. But thank you so much for visiting, and thank you so much for organizing. And it, as Rick said, it really is about you. So thank you.
Yeah, we are just preparing for the second day, and tomorrow we are going to have the hardest day. Saturday is where we are going to have the most of the conference. So.
Yes.
You've
40
got like
sessions.
4 or 5 tracks tomorrow, haven't you? It's really huge.
Yes, 5 tracks.
5 tracks. Yes. And even we have one speaker from Spain, so people from America will have to wake up very early to catch up on that session.
Yeah, because we have also different time zones. So
yes,
Latin America.
Yes.
This makes sense. Perfect. Right on time, I think almost. We are ready to welcome our next speaker, but thank you guys for this. It was really lovely.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
We wait for all the Spanish people on our conference.
Okay. Yes, wishing you success too, guys, in all of these featured track and all the conferences that you will lead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Back to the Global Azure Featured Track live stream, non-stop today. That was a really heartwarming, inspirational piece there about how the virtual events can draw communities together. And speaking of drawing communities together, I'm really pleased that we're now joined by Adi Polak, who is a senior cloud advocate, I think, aren't you now at Microsoft? And she's agreed to come on and talk to us about, again, the changes with physical to virtual and how that's affected the DevRel world and the engagement that Adi and her amazing team at Microsoft do. So Adi, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Rick and Annie, for having me. I love Global Azure and everything that you're doing, and the fact that there's so many communities around the globe kind of, join and do that. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's beautiful to see, the power of a global community.
So I mentioned that, the world has changed. You're a cloud advocate. That's all about community engagement. How have the changes over the past year or so? Well, we can't leave the house. I haven't left the house. I'm stuck in a little sort of perfect box here, right? My wife just hands me coffee from one side and it comes in. How has that affected you? Because what your role is all about is outreach, right? Talking to people.
Well, my cat hands me coffee once in a while, when she's up to it. But yeah, it affected a lot how developer relations work, how cloud advocacy works. But you know what? It's actually, I see it as an opportunity. Because if you look if you take like 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was all about traveling and meeting communities and meeting developers and helping developers to learn and grow and to use our products. And now we kind of transitioned into an online conferences, online meetups, etc. And I think when I'm looking at the numbers, like how many people attended the online Ignite versus how many people attended offline, it's fantastic to see the growth. I mean, 270,000 people attended Ignite online. And then it brings me to the question, of course, we know there's always the question of how can Microsoft accommodate 270,000 people in a global event, making all the technology work, etc. And this is a whole discussion that is super important to figure out all the details. But I think more important is why. Why why so many people attended the online event? What do you think?
So
Yeah,
we've
good.
talked about that, haven't we? So Annie, rather than me yabbering on, why did you online over in person?
Good question, I think, from Adi, definitely. And I think kind of my actually next question that's in my mind really ties nicely into it. Obviously, we can talk about how great the program must be, and there must have been really nice sessions to attend, and really kind of people are excited to learn, as always. But I think a really important part, I think, about having virtual events, and one of the greatest parts about it has been that you reach much broader audience. You reach a much diverse audience. You can reach so many more people at the one time because geography doesn't matter, where you're situated doesn't matter. So it really kind of broadens up those horizons. So kind of tying in from here, so have you found that you're having conversations with broader audiences or more different type of people than you normally did before?
Yeah. So I definitely see the same thing, something similar to what you're describing. So what I understand after carefully, thinking and going through a brainstorm process with the team is that there is a huge pain in the world. I mean, we do know that we're shifting into the digital space, and in order to shift into the digital space, we need more tech practitioners. It can be DevOps, Ops, IT people, developers, everything. People that can help design the product as well, UI, UX. There's a huge need for people to build this product. It's not only moving to digitization means you need the people to create that movement. And so there's a lot of business opportunities in digitization because you can reach a larger set of customers, basically, because now you're online. Everyone can purchase your product. But how do you move to the online, right? How do you do that? And you need practitioners, you need developers, you need ops, you need ITs, you need everyone that can help you build that product so you're able to sell it globally. And then, that means that there's a huge pain. There's not enough people that are experienced. There's not enough people that are trained to do it. And this is when, always when there's a pain, there's an opportunity. In business and in life, if you see someone struggling with something, it means, maybe I can build a product to help them do it better, do it at scale, or automate that process, right? In IT, in Ops and DevOps, we love automation. And the reason we love automation is, well, Rick, maybe you can tell us a little bit more why we love automation.
So we love automation because it gets me out of the room, right? So I've been told off twice in the past 5 minutes for the fact that my microphone's going up and down because I keep waving my arms and shouting. It's a really important point, though, Adi, that you just raised there. So, I mean, it's a completely different skill set, isn't it? That the creation of online content, doing maybe online learning videos, that kind of stuff, that's very different from standing up and flouncing on stage like I tend to do. How did you find that? How have you managed? How have you personally dealt with it, and how has the rest of your team sort of dealt with and supported each other through that transition?
Well, we did a lot of brainstorming, and we still do. And we like to call it experiments, because every new thing we try out, we try to understand, what was the impact, how does it work, what was the pain that we're trying to solve. And I think, the conversation about pain is really important, because at the end, when you're building something, you want to make sure someone really cares about what you're building. So if we're putting out a conference, if we're taking Ignite from an offline, in-person conference to online, there is a reason for it. And the reason is we want to reach more people. We want to help more people scale up. We want to basically help more people build their products, do the move to the cloud in the best way they can. And the challenges that exist today is, the complex of the product that exists. So sometimes, onboarding yourself into Microsoft technology or any cloud technology can be challenging. You need to take at least a few good set of months, depends on the area where you're coming from. If you're an experienced IT person or experienced developers, maybe a couple set of months just to understand part of the services, like a small chunk of the services and how they work together. If you don't have experience at all and you're just learning, maybe you need a year, maybe a year and a half. And then it's a conversation about, how can we build presentations, and how can we develop content that will present it online, that we can, help more people, because we're doing it online. And it's not only doing it online, we're doing it 24/7, which means everyone in the world, no matter what the time zone is, can join us and learn together and ask questions and engage. And this is very different than just recording a video and sending it out. And the difference is that people can ask questions, can join into hands-on learning experiment. And this is fantastic, because when you're learning, you always, at least for me, I always have questions like, why am I connecting that to, that service? Why am I using that open source? Or, is it, how scalable is it? Is it secure? There's a lot of questions that I always ask myself as an experienced developer already. I have this bulk of questions and procedure in my head already. When I'm trying on a new service, when I'm trying something, when I'm learning something new. And the fact that there is someone there that can answer your questions is amazing. That person can be anywhere in the world, and you're interacting with them without flying, without paying for expensive hotel, or paying for an expensive ticket or anything like that. And it really opens a whole new world of opportunities. And the second thing, I think it's also extremely important, is sometimes you're not aware. You live somewhere, you have your own community, you have your own family, your own neighborhood, and you're not aware about what's happening in the world. So what technologies evolves, maybe even career opportunities that might, just be there waiting for you to kind of join and, and be part of that, of take it as a career path in your life. That you're not aware of, because no one in your space works in IT or works with computers. Maybe no one in the family is doing anything like that, and it seems very distant. And then when you're joining an event, you can learn about the different opportunities that you have. I mean, there's so many courses online, there's so many free content online that you can actually take back responsibility of your own life, of your own career, and start learning and interacting with people that actually are doing it in practice. So, it's not only about courses or videos that are out there without the ability to communicate with the people. Now with the online events, you can ask questions, you can interact with experts, ask them how they see it, ask them, follow-up questions sometimes. You can connect on, I've noticed a lot of people like to connect on LinkedIn and like to connect on Twitter and ask kind of, more following up questions is how can I learn more? What are the areas? What's coming up? What's trending in the industry? It's also extremely important because when you're designing your career path, at least, for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? We're not talking 20 years from now. Who knows what we'll have by then, flying cars, right? So when we're talking about for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's really important to, to be able to communicate with and to talk to people that actually doing it right now. And this is what the global experience gives us, because we can join this online events, ask questions, participate, and make more aware decisions about our life and about the opportunities for us as human being on the planet.
Truly, yeah. I agree. It has really kind of evened the playing field, so everything is kind of accessible from every location in the world, and you kind of have to, you yourself can try out so many things. So that kind of really piques the interest on, okay, those are really interesting activities, and it's really kind of like offered a lot of new opportunities for people and your team as well. So how does success look like in this virtual world to your team or in your work at the moment? Like how does it then manifest itself?
Well, it's currently a conversation that everyone is discussing is how can you define a success? So in my role, I work both with the product teams and the community. So I have, one side, work with the product team to define the strategy, to understand how to make the product more approachable for the developers. And on the other side, I work with the developers, with the people that use our products or want to or aspire to use our products to better understand where they are, what they're looking to do, and what the pain that we're trying to solve. So it's kind of like a combination between the two. And my role, I'm closing that gap. So I'm talking to people, understanding their pain, understanding how they're building their architecture or how they foresee their architecture, in the future. And also sometimes they would ask me about careers, and then we will have a career conversation about what exists in the machine learning and AI space, what exists in the data space, right? So all these topics. And then I'm collecting, understanding where they are, what they're building, what they have access for, right? Some people, don't have access to a strong laptop. And that's fine. You don't necessarily need a strong laptop. This is something we need to bear in mind. I mean, if I can't run Visual Studio Code on my machine because I have a specific machine, this is information that is crucial to understand. This type of community don't have access to strong devices. So we need to maybe think about it, how we build it. And then we're working with the product team to shape the strategy and make sure we are inclusive and make sure the things that we're building it so everyone can use it. So this is kind of a two-way conversation. And also, I'm also understanding what's happening in the market. So if there's some new features that comes up in the market, I'm trying to understand, is that required a totally new service, or can we leverage existing services into that specific architecture, or do we need to rethink maybe some of the services to enable that as well, to make it approachable for people? So this is kind of a huge space of wearing multiple hats, basically. So it's a combination. It's about understanding where people are, helping them as well. Many times in career conversations or technical conversation about their architecture. If they want to add open source support, many times we see a lot of open source support that people want to add, and we really love that because we think, I'm a big believer in open source, in the open source community. So integrating that and making sure it's easy to integrate it, so they don't have to go through hoops and they don't have to go through various workarounds that sometimes happens. So doing that, and then collaborating with the product teams to make sure it's well integrated inside the products, everything that people are actually want.
So you touched on something a few minutes ago when you were talking about the kind of people you're engaging with, the kind of communities you're engaging with. Microsoft is really standing out at the moment with its stance on bluntly making the world a better place, right? And trying to filter its activities through a lens of good practice, ethics, that kind of stuff. You said that you can reach more people in the new virtual world. How has that lens of making the world a better place affected the activities that you're planning to do and the kinds of communities you're focusing on as a result?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm building content that can help communities with different level of expertise. So starting from totally newbies, beginners, starting from the basics, and then going up to architects and staff engineers or senior engineers in that field. So it's kind of a huge range of different expertise that I'm targeting, and the fact that I'm creating that content and presenting it and working with the community to understand if it was helpful, and if they have follow-up questions, I'm there to help them get through. Sometimes I would jump on, Teams meeting with them to see, how they're using it and kind of help them solve the different issues. So this is how, I see myself as helping the community to be successful with different products. It all starts with education, making sure it's easy to understand. I kind of have this rule of trying to remove jargon as much as possible from from the educational content that I'm creating. Sometimes it's hard because sometimes this is how we call some things in the industry, but then I will add kind of a glossary of kind of introduction to explain what this term means. And yeah, so this is basically how we're doing it. So it's not necessarily, a community in a specific location, but it's a general content that can speak to anyone. We're using English, but we're using very simple English. We won't go to philosophy, and all this stuff. So we're using simple English. We try to remove jargon as much as possible. If there is, adding in explanations for each terminology. And then making sure it's to collect feedback back to understand, how people interact. And when we're doing it online and when people are joining, I am really looking forward for the questions, because then it helps me as an individual understand how I can help more people, right? Because every person in the room that asks a question, most often, at least 40% of the room also had that question, but was too afraid to ask. So I always encourage people to ask questions, and I always ask them at the end. It's like, what are your questions, right? It's not a question of if, because you have questions. So what are your questions, and how I can help you get unblocked, and we can think together about the next thing, or the thing that you're building specifically.
Perfect. Another thing that's popped into our head while thinking about these topics was the question of what comes next. So there's this whole change has happened, very rapid change. Now we kind of we rethink what engagement looks like, what conferences look like, what events look like. And now we have to, I guess, again, do that. All of the community organizers, the content creators, now using words such as hybrid, and those are going to be the next talking points, I guess. So as an active participant and content creator, how do you think the world will look like in the future?
Wow. So I don't have a crystal ball, because otherwise I would probably be a billionaire by now. What do I think? Well, It's interesting. It's an interesting question because at one point, and I've been recently attending Dan Ariely exact conversation about, what will happen post-pandemic. And Dan Ariely is just a great person who always tells us how we are not rational and practically, don't use our brains. But and he mentioned that people's tendency is to go back to what you used to. And what we were used to is in-person conferences, in-person meetups. But he also say that after 30 days or 60 days, something like that, you develop new habits. So the question is, we've been past a year by now into that situation. Did we develop new habits? I mean, who knows, right? It's personal. It's a personal question. It has, having an online conference has huge benefit. Everyone can participate. In most cases, most conferences don't charge for participating, which is amazing. You can reach people from all over the globe, experts in their fields from all over the globe, and and interact with them and ask them the questions that that are really critical for you and your career. On the other hand, as humans, just the conversation of we want to meet each other, we want to have a beer maybe later on after the conference, we want to see the people that we're interacting with, right? So now we have this huge audience at home, everyone, but we can't see them, and it's hard, for us because we want to see the people that we're interacting with. So this is a great conversation. I personally hope it will be a hybrid solution where we can still meet people online because it opens a lot of doors for everyone. It helps so many people that can't attend or can't afford traveling to conferences. But we will see where things will go and how us as human susceptible to a whole year or maybe even 2 years. Who knows by then what will happen of developing and changing, and yeah.
For sure, super interesting. Maybe another question kind of connecting there. So now thinking about this in-person versus virtual, how has the engagement been like? Do you get more questions at the virtual event? Do people ask more or do they ask less, or how does it go?
More or less. So, the big difference is, depends how the conference is organized. But in online conferences, sometimes they would have a dedicated Teams chat or, kind of a dedicated tool for a specific session. So you can actually stay more, when people ask questions and they want to interact, or they stay more. And I found that, and also in conferences, I mean, sometime you have to leave the stage and say, this is the last questions, and then some people continue the conversation in the hall. But then you see a lot of people have to rush into either a new session or run to a totally different building because they have like 5 minutes to reach that. So I think at least from what I experience, and this is again, it's personal. From what I experience, people tend to interact more in online sessions. Because the speaker can stay longer, everyone can stay, there, and B, because they can ask questions during the session, which we often don't have in in-person conferences.
So there was an interesting question got thrown in by the Global Azure Pixies into the chat channel. We start thinking about maybe the cult of personality. There are icons, right, in the DevRel world that everybody knows, everybody looks up to. But certainly in the in-person world, it was relatively straightforward for new people to join and build a reputation and make themselves known. Do you think that in the virtual world that's harder because with online media and the sort of Twitch shows and that kind of stuff, the big names can perhaps drown out the smaller ones? Or do you think that that's just us sort of making up a question as it goes along and it's not really a problem?
That's an interesting conversation. So just to share for my, what I'm doing, I am on the program committee for Data and AI Summit. It's a summit that it doesn't run by Microsoft. It runs by Databricks, and we're welcoming around 100,000 practitioners in data and AI. And what we're doing there, we're doing shorter sessions to welcome new speakers. So the idea behind it is to give new speakers opportunity to present at a large conference that has 100,000 participants, attendees. And the reason behind it is because we need new voices. It's true that there are people that we usually tend to see in the big conferences, etc. But I do believe that there's a lot of voices that we're missing, and a lot that we can learn from new people that join that industry. So it might be that now in the online world this is happening, but we are doing different experiments to make sure we're bringing in new speakers to the online experience as well. By doing that and exposing more and more voices, because it's hard to become a speaker. It's going on stage presenting to a few hundred thousands of people. It's even harder to be a speaker online because you're speaking into a camera lens, basically. But it's something you can practice. So I believe giving people the opportunity to do that can help them and can help us learn more. So I think we should kind of do these kind of experiments to make sure we're giving more space for people to join this, our events, basically.
Yes, truly. And honestly, as a person, I work a lot with events, previously in person, now virtuals, like way too many events around me all the time. And I have personally kind of switched my whole kind of blueprint for event organizing completely when moving to virtual, as you've mentioned before, kind of shorter sessions, different formats, and all those kind of things. Maybe what has been your experience with that? And do you have any tips or tricks where our audience can take some of those and learn from them as well?
Wow. So I think in hardware, everything is pretty covered. I mean, just Bing with Google, whatever you want, you'll find all the solutions. On a personal level, you have to practice. You have to practice speaking into a camera lens, as much as weird as it sounds. And also, in PowerPoint, there's this great feature that maybe, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. I'm telling you a secret now. But in PowerPoint, there is a built-in trainer in the online PowerPoint where you can actually hit record, run your presentation, and then in the end, it gives you comments, which is perfect because, now in the online, sometimes you don't have someone to practice with, and then they can tell you, the different words or what was good, what was less. But with the online coach, it's perfect because you already know where you stop, how long did you speak, or how many slides did you move forward at a different pace, or maybe you used words that weren't clear enough, or maybe you overused some of the words and you want to change it a little bit. So this is, I think, if there's something people are taking away, and please take that away, is the online PowerPoint has a built-in coach that can help you, really make really perfect your presentation skills.
So it's almost, Addy, like you were watching the clock and just trying to find that perfect note to end on there. So that's a really great tip for everybody. We are at time, so I have the great job of thanking you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Lovely to see you again. And it's been a really insightful conversation as well, I think. So thank you very, very much, Addy Polak. And Annie, throwing to you to tell our viewers what's coming up next.
Yes, we have a really great and exciting session coming up next with Leon, who is the Group Program Manager at Microsoft, responsible for Azure's UX, essentially. And his work really touches everything and anything almost that affects Azure. So looking forward to a really great session.
And Carl.
Perfect. Very much a welcome, Leon. Leon.
Hi, thank you very much for having me today.
All right. So Leon, echo, strangely enough. That might be your side, Leon. I'm sorry.
Is it me? Is it me? Let me see. Let me check if it's me. Could it be me? Is it better now?
That does sound better. I can't hear myself anymore. Fantastic.
Perfect.
That's a brilliant array of guitars behind you as well, Leon. There's a side of you I hadn't noticed. So you are about the most enthusiastic, most passionate person I ever see presenting at sessions like MVP Summit and that kind of stuff on the Azure portal. So I'm hoping that very much this is where Annie and I can just relax and go, Leon, what would you like to talk to us about regarding the Azure portal? What drives you? What makes you so enthusiastic about it?
So we've been working super hard in the past, actually, I was going to say past few months, always actually working hard. And first, I wanted to thank everyone here in the audience that might have provided us feedback, because the way in which we make it better is with your feedback. So first, let me start there. We're always super excited to hear from you and to make it better with what we learn from you. So if you send us feedback, thank you and keep it coming. If you didn't, please do. And even feel free to write me directly. You will get Rick will have my email at the end or at some point right here. So I'll share my email. I'm always super happy to learn from any one of you. And a few things that we've been doing, we are right now on a quest to figure out how can we make things simpler. We want to give a product that just works, focus a lot on the fundamentals of the platform. We experienced like a phenomenal growth in usage last year. So the usage growth was kind of like unprecedented in terms of how much the portal was used. But however, we worked really hard to make sure that that use doesn't result in reduced quality of service. In fact, we wanted to make sure that we keep improving performance, reliability, and things like that. So that's one of the things that I hope everyone is noticing, that kind of like the portal is getting faster by the day. And with this, I'm not saying that we are done and we are fast enough. We will make it faster, we will make it better, but that's one thing that is super important to us. And another thing that we want to do is figure out how to make things simpler, how to bring the things that are important to you, to your customers, to everyone that you work with, front and center, and reduce the distance between you and the goals that you want to accomplish. Couple of examples that I could call out. Top of mind, for example, one that we did recently is we pick like when you create a Linux VM, for example, a Linux virtual machine in the portal. The typical pattern if you do Linux is you use SSH keys. Sorry, I said it in a way that was hard to understand, but SSH keys. And doing that in Azure was pretty hard a while ago. One of the things that we did is we simplified the experience such that by just providing a virtual machine name, just a resource name, you can create a VM, get a pair of SSH keys, and just get going just with the minimal set of kind of like interactions, if you will. And that VM also is ready to be connected to, and trying to simplify all the steps, right? Every time that you do something, put the next thing front and center.
Perfect.
More things like that. But one thing that you might notice is that I talk a lot. I'm going to pause.
No, it's really good. It's really good. We have some questions, but obviously we want to hear from you and your insights. So it's good that there's a lot of talking for sure. So kind of connecting there, as I think anyone could notice, and I think which is very true, you're extremely passionate about the usability. How do you assess and improve the design of the portal for usability?
That's a fantastic question, actually, and a question that I love, because the thing is that getting this is a multi-dimensional question. We do a lot of activities in order to make sure that we have good usability. And with this, I want to be clear. We know that we are not done. This is a journey. It's a very long journey. The important thing with this is that we persevere, that we endure, and we keep pushing forward, because we know that we will get where we want to get. It's going to take us time, but we will get there. It's not going to be lack of trying and lack of effort. So we do a lot of things in order to assess usability. So I'm going to describe a few activities, and it's not all, but one of the things that we do, for example, every time that we have a new design idea, whatever that is, every single week we run usability studies. So even on an idea that is on a paper, we have like multiple tiers of studies that we do. So we have ones that are like the quick studies, where basically we can get very quick feedback about an experience, and then kind of like see, since we run those every week, we can have a lot of signals if we wanted to. Of course, before getting to that stage, we look a lot of kind of like usage data and feedback that we get from multiple channels from everyone. I was kind of like, I started from the wrong place, because before we decide what we're going to do, we also, of course, observe all the feedback that we get from everyone, plus usage data, plus different kind of stream signals that we get in the product, where we decide what do we go after. Also, we do a lot of usability testing and activities where we do a lot of customer interviews, which, by the way, both for usability testing, customer interview, or things like that, anyone that is in the call is invited to participate. So if you're interested, just send me an email and we'll figure out a way and get to, we always need help. Aside of those usability tests, of course, again, as I mentioned, like the constant assessment of streams of feedback. Thank you. The streams of feedback, usability testing. We have some, for example, we ask the Net Promoter Score and customer effort value and customer effort and things like that. We have different surveys in the portal that also we use to calibrate. We run a customer satisfaction survey as well to understand the product at large. We look a lot of usage telemetry. Every 4 months or so, we run a very big benchmark with the top scenarios, where we bring like a lot of customers, and we run a benchmark to calculate one thing that is called the system usability scale. And some areas we create like a heat map and a scorecard of how those large scenarios are performing. So long story short, I'm going all over the place, but if I would have to summarize, basically we try to have activities related with usability, customer data, and being in touch with what people need throughout the cycle. We learned that when we don't do it that way, it does not work. It never works. One more that I would like to add, one of the things that we started to do more and more, and you might have noticed, is we increase the number of experiments. We are using kind of like a world-class experimentation platform that Microsoft has in-house, created by Bing, that is awesome. And we run like a lot of experiments all the time. Over the last year, we ran like more than 150 experiments in production, and we hope that it's going to double year over year.
I always have to catch my breath when you start talking, Leon. Sorry. So it's really great to see that sort of drive for usability, but the portal's enormous, right? I mean, you did mention how many blades and things you'd got at some point, so you can throw that one in a minute. But is it still built entirely by your team? How much is done by the individual service teams? Because obviously every single Azure service is in there, and how much of it is actually still sort of your baby that you do with your team yourselves?
That is an awesome question. And it's one of the things that makes this job super, super fun, because the portal is enormous. By the way, we have like one thing that we call extensions. That is basically kind of like the way in which you plug a module in the portal. Just to give you an idea of the granularity, there's a compute extension that has the BMSS, and some of those products. There's kind of like a websites extension that has web apps and other things. So you get the idea. Like the extensions have one or more product that go together, that they surface the UI. And right now we have more than 200 extensions in production. In fact, I would say that right now I was looking at 206 or something like that. But basically, it's an ecosystem in very fast growth, and there are more than 8,000. We call them screens now, 8,000 screens now. That kind of like we used to have that thing that opened to the right, but we retired it a while ago, and we're moving to more kind of like a conventional interaction patterns. Which, going back to the usability, that was one of the biggest sources of feedback. Like, we used to call that one, by the way, don't break the web, right? Make the thing to work like the rest of the web. But it's huge. So basically, another thing that makes this job super fun is that we do not always create the portal infrastructure. There is a world-class infrastructure that runs these types of workloads, right? It's one of the largest single-page applications in the industry. Also, we create a development framework that other teams across Microsoft use, and hosting platform where we can host the code that they write, and we can give them like different hosting capabilities, telemetry, experimentation, all the services that I was mentioning. So I don't have like a number in my head, but I would say that from the usage, between 20 and 30% is within the portal organization. The rest might be distributed. That said, we work closely with all the teams because the team is responsible for the overall quality, and we set the design patterns and the design abstractions that the different teams need to use, which again, they are not always used. Also, sometimes we need to work with the teams to make sure that they use them. But basically, just to summarize, we do not only create a UI, but create a platform and a developer framework that other teams use. 30% of what you might use might lie in our team. The rest probably is distributed, but we work with everyone across the company because we are responsible for the different kind of like metrics or OKRs or however we want to call them, related with success of the user experience.
So the portal itself, I mean, you said it was the largest single page application in, I don't know, Christendom, whatever. But what people may not know is that I can download the portal as a PWA, I think, can't I, Leon? If I'm on a server and I've only got IE, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Say again, Rick. Go ahead, sorry.
If I'm using Windows Server and I try and access the portal with Internet Explorer, you'll politely suggest that I download a different version.
Yes, that's all. Actually, thank you very much for calling that out. We have 3 form factors that you can decide to use they use to manage Azure. One is the portal in a browser, the one that we've been talking about that we know and love. The other one is if you are in an environment where you cannot get, where you might not be able to install your browser of choice or whatnot, we have like a Electron-based app basically that you can download that can let you use the portal with all the benefits that you would get in a modern browser. And then the third form factor that is one of also that we love is the Azure mobile app, which if you didn't try it, please do and let us know what you think. We are getting like a really good feedback for the app. It's very highly rated in the app stores. It's 4.8 stars in iOS App Store, so we're super proud of that. And we'd love 2 things, that you to try it and to let us know what you think and what should we do to make it even better.
And how do you see the usage split across those? You've obviously got telemetry. Is this one where the portal is the most? Is the Electron app still a little niche just for old fuddy-duddies like me who refused to leave Server 2012 R2 behind? And is the mobile app is obviously very, very popular. Is that gaining traction? Where's the sort of the split coming for usage?
That's a fantastic question. Most of the usage is in the browser, in the website. In the app, which, by the way, the thing that we do is we are hosting the website in an Electron app. Usage is small, but one interesting data point, Rick, is that the satisfaction, measuring whatever metric, let's use Net Promoter Score just for fun, is super high. So in general, all the signals that we have for customer satisfaction, the ones who decide to use that form factor seem to be super happy according with what we see. But it's a small fragment of our audience. The mobile app, still the usage is not as large as we would like to, but it's growing. It's growing on a 15% year over year, but still we would like to have like a more aggressive growth in terms of the usage. And things that we are doing, we are increasing the things that you can do and the presence of the mobile app in the portal places to connect to things so we can kind of like increase awareness. In many cases, many folks don't use it because they don't know that it exists. So, one thing that we added that is pretty cool, when you go to a virtual machine or to other places, we put it first in VM as an experiment. There is a button that says viewing or open in mobile app. So when you click it, you will get a QR code, you scan the code, and you get that VM directly in your phone. So we are going to do that across many other services as well. So the idea is that we want to shorten the distance between what you're seeing in the screen and when you have to go and be on the go, take it in your pocket.
Perfect. And I think as I mentioned before, like the enthusiasm about Azure Portal is really in all of your speeches and sessions and everything. But the current Azure Portal has been around for a while. So how do you continue and kind of what drives you and your passion, and how do you maintain the great love and passion that you have for Azure Portal?
That's a fantastic question. And I think the thing that I'm super excited about right now, and I would like to call everyone that is on the audience to reach out, because we are on a journey to make it simpler. to make things like easier to use. I mean, we've been on that journey, but we want to accelerate that journey. And to do that, we need to learn from you. What are the things that you do where the tools get in the way, and how can we make them better? So I would love to hear from everyone that is watching this. What are the scenarios where the tools are getting in their way, and what can we do to make them better? Things that one of the awesome things that is super exciting right now in terms of building a user experience is that the Microsoft platform evolved. I mean, the underlying platform that we are building on, and now we have better tools to create better experiences that are richer and can do things that are pretty unique, that can put Azure in a great position in terms of bringing things that are important to you front and center and make them easy to use. For example, if you go to our experience to browse through resources, now that we have Azure Resource Graph, we could start providing aggregation, summarization, grouping, like complex filtering, downloading things, or things like that, where basically it's just the beginning of that journey. But the set of new technologies that we have in Azure are open a new set of possibilities that can let us create experiences that were never seen before. And that's super exciting.
Truly, yeah. Really interesting to hear about the life cycle and how kind of how the all works together. But then maybe tying in there, what would you say has been the greatest challenge with the portal over its lifetime, and what are you then most proud of?
That's and one thing I would like to add to the other question, sorry, which is super important, is the fact that the portal is used by a lot of people, and every time that we make any one of those things better, when we look at the amount of people that we touch and that we can make their lives, I mean, the productivity better or things like that, that's one of the most kind of like enriching, I don't know what word to use, but it's an awesome kind of like feeling. So that's one of the things that makes me super happy and excited. The question was like, can you repeat the question? I had it, but I missed one of it.
Yeah, it was essentially, what has been the greatest challenge in the portal's lifetime, as well as then what's the thing that you're most proud of? So I guess the great successes and maybe the challenges then.
You know, one of the things that I like to say about our team is that we made, I mean, some of our biggest capital in terms of knowledge is not what we got right, but all the things that we got wrong. So we made so many mistakes that I think that I would not know where to start when you say what is the biggest challenge, because we made a lot of mistakes, which I'm sure that many of you that have been using this and following might have observed, and we are very well aware. Probably there are different challenges. One big challenge that we have is a challenge that is related with scale, and with the scale of this user experience, because many of the scale in different senses, in the sense of how large it is, how many services it exposes, how many teams are working together at the same time. Remember that we created an environment where hundreds of teams can code at the same time and deploy without central coordination. And also the breadth of the people that are going to use this. It's from a student with one Azure VM trying to learn Azure from a Fortune 500 company with like a very large installation. So creating an experience that accommodates all those challenges, is super challenging by itself, and brings some challenges that are pretty unique. For example, one thing is to offer like 20, 30 services like we did in the previous portal, which was very clear. You have a list of services and whatnot. A different challenge is when you have more than 250. Like how do you expose them in a way that people can find them and understand what our offering is? So I would say that that's a large challenge. The other one is offering consistency of experience, consistency in terms of how it looks, but also the quality of experiences that you would get across such a large surface area. That's a constant moving target. And that's one thing that we are super proud of, because we can do better always, right? I'm not claiming that we are perfect, but I think we are on very reasonable place and on track to make it even better in terms of kind of like providing an experience across those hundreds of services that looks the same in certain areas. And one thing that I'm super proud of, by the way, like the last one, is that the growth that we experienced in usage over the last year was phenomenal. So it was kind of like probably one of our highest moments of growth, and we grew without having any disruption in our kind of like growth, also on performance, reliability, and quality of service and experience. So very long answer, but hope that more or less gives an idea.
Yeah, no, it was a really good answer and really good things. Maybe first kind of now that we've been kind of touching up on the past and whatnot of Azure Portal, maybe then continuing the future of Azure Portal, I would say, is there any glimpses that you can give? And maybe if not that, maybe how do you assess the roadmap, and what are the kind of needs, and how do you see it evolving in the future?
That's a great question. One of the things that we want to do is one challenge that we have as a team, and that I explicitly put to the team, like, we want to evolve it in a way that is not disruptive to the people using it. We have a lot of people, so we need to figure out how to evolve it and make it better in a way that you see that it's better, but it's not disruptive in a way that you don't have to relearn it every 6 months. So we are very well aware of we got a lot of feedback around constant change. So we are trying to figure out how can we make it better, that you feel that it's better, but you don't feel that everything changes under you. Things that I would say, we want to make sure, we want to keep doubling down in it just works, and increase kind of like what we call the fundamentals, like performance, reliability. One thing that I would say to everyone in the call, if you experience any, the word experience made my sentence very hard. If you get through any experience that is slow, any screen or any interaction, let me know. We would love to debug it and check it out, because we want to fix them all. Right now, one of the things that we are doing is we were focusing more on like page load time, but we're going to look at all the network calls, basically trying to make sure that we can help kind of reduce the time that going through an experience really takes. Same with quality. If you get to any screens or whatever they are that are failing, let us know. So we want to continue investing in the fundamentals, but also do more to bring the things that are important, that are really hard to find and requiring navigating a lot more front and center. So the things that are important to you, they find you in a better way than that they do today, that you need to find them. So those are kind of like two things where we are hoping to make some significant improvement in the next 6 months. Also, again, what I was mentioning at the beginning with simplicity is another one, like making like things easier to do for folks like the ones that are watching this video. So I want to ask again, everyone, reach out. I would love to set like a call and learn from you. What are the experiences that we should be making easier? So we cannot do it if we don't hear from you, because you are the real users of the product. So fundamentals, simplicity, and efficiency are three things that you can see, that we hope that you will see in the next 6 months or moving forward.
So in the beginning, right, the portal was where you went to do everything. I want to create a website, I got the portal. I want to create a VM, I got the portal. Nowadays, we're all about automation, we're all about infrastructure as code, we're all about DevOps pipelines. How do you see the portal fitting into that landscape moving forward, Leon? Do you see some aspects of its usage dwindling? Are you seeing yourselves as an enabler for that automation in some way?
I love the question, and that's a fantastic question, because basically we have one scenario that we call graduation. We understand that there's a given point that you cannot use the portal for a sustainable kind of like infrastructure. And you're not going to, I mean, you get to a size or to a level of maturity that probably clicking might be more error prone than having automated scripts or what you described. So we have a scenario that we call graduation. That is one that we want to invest to, which basically what we want to do is we want to reduce the distance between what you are seeing in the portal and how can you generate those scripts to support that automation. And that's one also that we are actively working on right now, and that we hope that folks can see in the next. There are already a few things there, by the way. Like, for example, when you go to a creation, when you go through a creation screen at the end, you can get the ARM template. When you go to a resource, you can always view the underlying JSON, so you can see the structure of what you're getting. And there are a few other things here and there that already support some scenarios. We will be adding more moving forward. This is one that is very well known, and fully agree with what you said. Like, basically, it's not the expectation of the portal team that you stay in the portal all the time. In fact, if you graduate, we know that you're going to have like a more kind of like a sustainable relationship with us, with Azure. So we want to make sure that if you go to that stage, we are there to support you and to make you successful.
Okay, I heard that. So one of the things I use most as a practitioner is something outside the Azure portal called Azure Resource Explorer. But what many people don't know is there's also a Resource Explorer inside the portal. But it doesn't quite tell me the same stuff, and it isn't quite as easy to use. I love what you're doing around the automation scripts, but I sometimes just want to see what the state of things is on the under the hood to be able to infer that into my templates and automation. Is there any chance you might give the Resource Explorer a bit of love sometime, Leon?
That's a really good question. Like basically what we tried to do with, for example, the Vue.json or things like that was bringing some of the functionality from the Resource Explorer closer to the flows that you use all the time. Like, for example, one of the things that the Vue.json is very similar, for example, to the one in Resource Explorer, but you don't need to go find the Resource Explorer. We put it kind of like in the resource itself. It's in the Essentials panel at the top. The other thing that you can do with the Resource Explorer, for example, is seeing what are the API shapes and what calls do you need to make. That's another one that we are right now exploring doing. Long story short, probably more than the Resource Explorer is how can we bring all that functionality in a way that you have it front and center in the same place where you go through your resources. That's what I meant also, Rick, with kind of like reducing the distance. For example, imagine that in what you do, in a way without almost any friction, you can go and see the same thing that you would see with the Resource Explorer with a very simple gesture. So that's the place where we are trying to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I was trying to type in a question for Annie, but I can't type fast enough and you talk too quickly. Carl, the producer, was asking me a very specific question. I'd like to generalize it a bit. There are lots and lots of great services in Azure, but each of them needs a slightly different user interface to work with. Containers, AKS, is a really great example of a really complex service that the UI can be a challenge. How do you, as the portal team, help the services teams to come up with that right UI and try and drive that simplicity that's so close to your heart?
That's a great question. And AKS in particular, well, I'll give a two-part answer, but you'll see in a second why. Like in particular, one of the first things that we do is we are trying to, there's a lot of things that are different, but many things that are similar. For the things that are, for the interactions that are similar, that have commonality across Azure, we have a set of design patterns that are very well tested with all these usability methods that we talk and telemetry and whatnot, which basically we offer to all the teams, not only design patterns, but components that they can go use in order to implement those patterns. So we offer that, plus we have lots of kind of like internal bodies within the team where we can go and have discussions around the best practices for experience and whatnot. That said, the AKS experience is one of the experiences that is within the portal team. So that's one that we understand. We know that it's a very complex one, and that's one of the areas that we are working on improving right now as we speak. That's one that there's actively worked on to have like to improving the onboarding and getting started, and actually the end-to-end of it. And one of the beauty of those design patterns, also since we are at that, is given that within our team, within the portal team, we have some of the very high complexity, high usage experiences like AKS, virtual machines, VMSS, and many others. That gives us a great kind of like place to test new patterns, make sure that they work, validate them, and then offer them. So those patterns are not created in the void, but in the context of real experiences with real customers, using like experimentation, usability, all the things that we commented at the beginning.
Perfect. We will be wrapping up soon, but I think I have the final question so far, if nothing else pops up. A question that I always like to ask great speakers who are super passionate about their topic is, now that we've been asking questions and we've been talking to you about what we are interested in, what is a question that you would like to answer? What is your kind of topic that you would like to speak about? Or what's your favorite question about Azure Portal that you haven't been able to answer yet so far?
Oh, that's a good, I think, honestly, that's a good question. I don't know. That's the honest answer. I can invent something, but I don't know. I think that we touch on a lot of really awesome things. One thing that I would say is that it's a little bit of a repetition of what I mentioned at the beginning, but one thing that we believe, we understand that the cloud, even though it's getting kind of like second nature or kind of like getting mainstream, for many folks it's something new, can be intimidating. And one thing that we want to do is we make it non-intimidating, and I think that anyone can go and use effectively to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. So the thing that I would like to invite everyone in the call, if you're trying to use the cloud, either you're a new customer and the tools are getting in the way, or you're an experienced customer and the tools are getting in the way too, just let us know. Just reach out directly to me, and I would love to learn from your experience And again, I cannot guarantee that we are going to fix things like right away, but it's important for us to know, because the more that we know, the more that we can create the tools that you really need at large.
Perfect. We are running out of time, but it's been super interesting. Loving the discussion so far, and we are super thankful and happy that you were able to join us today. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. This was awesome. It's always a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, so getting ready for our next speaker. So Rick, you will be introducing Adrian.
I will, yes. So I haven't actually seen that Adrian has arrived.
I think she has.
Ping in chat whether she's around, or am I filling time for a little bit?
She's around.
All right, welcome, Adrian. So I've got to say, I've been looking forward to this session all day, not least of which because, food is important to me. Adrian, welcome. You're going to talk to us, I understand, about durable functions, but through Lumpia, which are spring rolls, I think. Let me give the floor to you because I want to learn more.
Of course. Yes, so I am a Filipina engineer. I am proud of being Filipino, and lumpia is essentially a fried spring roll, yes. And so the whole reason this talk even came about, or this idea came about, was kind of similar to what Leon was talking about, where he said we need to make things simpler. And so when I was talking about durable functions, or trying to explain them to some folks who have not used them before, there's a lot of questions that come up when you ask about it, right? And they're like, oh, well, I know what Azure functions are, but what are durable functions? Or even me, when I first learned about it, I'm like, what's the difference with it, And so this is something that I think is very helpful for me, but I like to share because I think it helps a lot of other people too when they learn something that's new. And so when I started learning about durable functions and the different patterns that you could implement them through, they kind of made sense to me in the way that you create this food, this lumpia. And so, for example, we'll start with the basics. I usually ask people, are you familiar with Azure functions? And most people will say yes, or most people will say I've heard of them, or, we lay the foundation, right? A function, you usually use them when you don't really want to care about managing the infrastructure or provisioning resources or things like that. You just want to do something and you want somebody else to take care of everything else that hosts it or that handles it. And everyone's kind of good with that baseline. So now when you throw in durable functions into the mix, you're like, well, what is that? And the example I like to give is, we're not into the lumpia examples yet, but the example I like to give, it's kind of like mods in a video game. So if you ever played World of Warcraft or even Minecraft, I've played World of Warcraft a long time ago before I stopped and realized it took up too much of my life, that, it's better to play when you have specific mods. There are mods to show you, different things. There's a countdown of how much longer you have until you can cast the same spell again, or you have a different mod that shows you the health and other things. So they extend the original game. They help you do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with the original, and that's kind of how I view durable functions. Durable functions are an extension to the Azure Functions library, and they kind of help make certain things easier that you can do natively. It's possible in Azure Functions, but are much harder to do unless you use this mod, or in this case, this extended library of durable functions.
Okay, so I think most of us know contextually how a straightforward, if you like, generic Azure function is going to be useful, right? That sort of small block of code that fires up, does something, goes away again. What's the difference then between a function and a durable function? Where might I use one over the other?
Yes, so Azure functions are great if you need to do something quick. If you need to do something that maybe takes a minute or two, or something that can be neatly wrapped into a very specific time span that may not run over. So durable functions, what they extend on the Azure Functions Library is the ability to write something that's useful for stateful or long-running workflows. So what is a stateful workflow? Well, a stateful workflow is just anything that you need to store some data on. You need to keep track of something. A good example is, maybe you have some sort of Instagram clone, and as people upload your photos or upload their photos to your platform, you might have a function that is running that maybe resizes that photo so that it aligns with whatever template you have or default that you have for your platform. But maybe in the middle of that, you have to keep track that, let's say this person uploads a photo that violates the terms of service, for example. That's something that you might want to keep track of. You want to keep track of which person uploaded this particular photo that broke the terms of service, and you want to know that the next time that they do that. And so something like an Azure function, while that's good for the processing of the photo, of scaling it or doing whatever, filtering it, a durable function would be more helpful in this case, because this could span however long, however the lifespan of the account. You want to keep track of what this person might be posting, and decide what to do if they violate the terms of service 3 times or something like that. So stateful is just, you want to keep track of something, and that's one scenario where durable functions are better, because not only do they allow you to do that, but they have some built-in things that do that for you. Another scenario where durable functions are better are long-running workflows. So what's a long-running workflow? Well, long-running workflows are exactly like what they sound, right? Long-running is something that I like to say is just longer than the time span of the request. So to put a silly example for it, if you're in the middle of a Filipino party eating this delicious lumpia, and you see how the party is going, has karaoke started yet? Are all the uncles getting super drunk and starting to sing the really bad karaoke songs? You kind of estimate how long they're going to be singing this karaoke, so you'll have to decide, do I need to make some more lumpia to feed them because they're going to be hungry a little bit later? But this is a silly example to say this is a very long-running request. This is a long-running thing that keeps going, and you want to keep track of what is happening there. So that is another example of what a durable function is most useful for stateful workflows and for longer-running workflows, something where you wouldn't want somebody sitting at the computer waiting for this request to fully execute and be done.
Okay. So I was really intrigued by the idea of sort of food-based patterns. One of the things I hit all the time is the difficulty of trying to get across concepts to both technical and non-technical people. So I love your idea about using food. So tell me more. How many food-based developer patterns have you got in this wonderful sounding toolbox of yours?
In this particular case, so there are about 6 patterns that durable functions can be implemented in, at least officially documented. The ones that I think lend itself better to this food example are 3 of them. So the first one is the function chaining pattern, right? So this one is, if you've been working with development for a while, it's very, very similar to what you think of when you think of the pipe operator, right? The output of one is the input of another. And so that's the same thing that I like to think about when I talk about the function chaining pattern. So it's sequential in this case. And what I like to describe here is it's similar to the steps of creating lumpia, right? There's a step of you get the wrappers out, the fried wrappers that you're about to wrap. You have some filling that you have, and you got to scoop that filling into the wrapper. Then you have to fold it in a specific way, and then you have to put some egg wash onto the top, and then seal that egg roll. And then, there could be several other steps there where you need to get some approval from mom, because she only knows best what the right kind of roll is. If it's not correct, you have to remake it. And so in this particular way, it's easy to say it's a contrived example, but I think it's key to understanding what's happening before you even get into the code. If you can understand that conceptually, of there's one step and the output of that step now goes into the next step. That's exactly what's happening when you run this kind of pattern in durable functions. So this chain pattern could be the activity function is you get a wrapper, and then the next activity function that the orchestrator would call is you scoop some filling into that wrapper, and now you have this wrapper with the scooped of filling, and then all of those different steps could equate to the activity functions that are in your workflow, and then at the very end of it, you have this beautiful set of ready-made lumpia that's ready to fry, and that could be the last step in this durable function. So that's one of the patterns.
Okay. So in your work, are you finding that durable functions are one of those tools that you reach for a lot, or do you find that they're a little bit niche? I mean, again, ordinary functions, they crop up all the time. They're a great sort of, I don't know, universal screwdriver, right? Whereas a durable function is a bit more niche, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily less important, does it?
No, the whole reason I even started researching this was we had a scenario in my last job where our entire platform was based on a very, very long running workflow. There were several complex steps, and each of the steps sometimes had, other steps that needed to be done. And this all applied to this. So as an example, we basically get some files that need to be processed. We get them from a client, and then as this file goes through our platform, we have to clean it. We have to map a lot of the data. We have to make some external calls to external services because we have to check specific portions of that data, and so on and so forth. This kind of complex workflow that if we were to use an Azure function, we would have a very high bill because this set of tasks that needed to be done is way longer than what would be appropriate if we just allowed our customers to upload their file and wait for this entire process. Another big portion of our process was that these calls to the external services to double check portions of our data, these could take up to 48 hours to either send us back a response or to say, yes, this is the right piece of data, it matches, so you're okay to mark it as a match, or things like that. So in these kinds of scenarios, we were feeling the pain of, we know we can't use something that's quick and easy where you just spin it up and do the process, because there are so many steps in this process. And so that's why durable functions, although, it's not that you can't use them, they're just better for other things. And in this particular case, they definitely helped because of the way that our problem was structured. Hello, Jonah. Thank you. Lumpia is amazing. Lumpia is great.
So, Adrian, interestingly, we had Michelle Bustamante on at the start of the stream, and she was talking about microservices architectures and patterns and things. Do you find the durable functions are a good fit for some of those microservices requirements?
It can be. So if they fall in line, there are certain ways that you have to write durable functions to make the best of what they provide for you. As an example of that, so in durable functions, there are a few types of function types that you'll see when you create one. There's the client function, which is kind of the Kickstarter, right? This could be the HTTP call that is done, or something that instantiates the next type, which is the orchestrator function. And the orchestrator function is kind of like what it sounds. It's like an orchestrator. They're the ones in charge of the steps. They're the ones dictating the workflow. They're the ones that see where to go, what's next, all of that. And so they're kind of like the coordinator of this durable function. And then you have activity functions, which are kind of, again, similar to what they sound like, which is this is where the actual work happens. These are the processing tasks, in the Instagram example I gave, this is where you would be scaling the photo down. So this is where the actual work occurs. And I think this would better suit the model that was being talked about by Michelle, where if you really align with one of the requirements of durable functions, and that is making sure that your orchestrator functions are deterministic. What is deterministic? It's a really big, scary word. Well, deterministic just means that no matter how many times you run this kind of process or run this task, that you get the same result every time. It has to be repeatable with the same result. And so if you keep that in mind, that kind of requirement of writing your orchestrator functions in that way, I think it lends itself better to microservices because it's already super distributed and it's already hard enough to kind of trace those things, right, if something goes wrong. But if you're able to adhere to this kind of pure deterministic orchestrator, a very repeatable function in your durable function, then I think it does make it easier to set up when you use it in conjunction with some sort of microservice architecture.
Okay, so I think I appreciate the whole sort of the food analogies and things. I think that really gets across the concepts to people. That's the last answer sort of articulated where they fit. If I'm a developer and I want to use durable functions, what do I need to learn? Are there specific language requirements? Are there specific techniques or patterns that I need to know and understand to be able to take advantage of these?
They're good to know, but I don't think so. I would always start the way that I did, which was I started with Azure Functions because they are an extension of that kind of base library, and you get familiar with how to use functions in general. I think the next step of durable functions becomes a little bit easier. So when you learn Azure Functions to start, you learn about what are triggers, what are the things that can invoke or start your functions, what kinds of things can start, what kinds of triggers are there. You learn about what is supported by Microsoft. So they have, pretty much any language that you want to use. Most of the popular ones like C#, JavaScript, Python, you can use, and it's the same in durable functions because again, it's an extension of Azure Functions. So I think, at least personally, when I got comfortable with Azure Functions, the concepts of durable functions become much easier to see and much easier to implement. And for me myself, it was always a very good learning experience to go through some of the tutorials on the Microsoft documentation because they're fairly detailed and they very much helped me. The only places that I filled in the gaps were as I started to go through them, I did make these kind of food examples to help it stick because it can get very tiring to kind of read a lot of new words and a lot of new tech that you may not be familiar with at first, but having this kind of mapping to simpler, funnier analogies kind of helps it make it easier to learn, as with most things that are new.
So I see that you work for MongoDB, so you're used to dealing with sort of document databases and that kind of stuff. My past experience of durable functions has always tended to be if I need state store, that kind of thing, I'm throwing stuff into Azure storage. Is there a great connection? Is there a good sort of synergy between your MongoDB, DocDB roots and your durable functions journey?
Not necessarily. It was a coincidence that I happened to work for MongoDB. No, not personally. I have not tried it yet, but I don't think there should be too much of a problem. It is generalized enough, but I'm not going to speak further because I haven't done anything with it, so no.
Yes, really great, really great. In your opinion, are durable functions Azure specific, or can someone who builds multi-cloud apps really benefit from them as well, or how does it work?
So durable functions are, I first learned about them through Azure, but there are several other implementations. The core concepts of it, of having a stateful workflow and something that accommodates long-running workflows, can be used in other places. I have been very happy with Azure's version of durable functions. So I've always just stayed with them. I have not really explored further, but I do know that the concepts have been used. I think there is actually an open source version that's trying to make workflows and stateful workflows and orchestrations open, and that's temporal, I believe. And so I think they actually had a couple people who used to create or work on the teams that worked on durable functions. They kind of started their own thing, and I'm trying to open source those very things, the orchestrations and the long-running stateful workflows.
Perfect. Really, really great. Thanks. So you're here talking about durable functions. Is there anything else that you would kind of like to expand on here on any of the topics that we've touched upon right now, or is there anything else that comes to mind at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I came up with this is I think what's more important, other than the durable functions themselves, is I very much resonated with what Leon was saying in trying to make things simpler. And so if anybody is watching that is a beginner, or is not even necessarily a beginner, but just somebody who's new to any technology in general, I think it's very helpful to kind of put these new pieces of technology into ways that you understand. Maybe these examples make sense to you, maybe they don't. Maybe find something that works with you. Maybe you're more interested in desserts. That's another thing that I really love. I have another talk that talks about JavaScript array methods using desserts. So if you guys notice a pattern, I really like to use food examples with tech because they stick, they're funny, and they help me really understand it. When it comes to more difficult technologies or things that are a bit more complex, something that's you're not familiar with, something is always going to be much harder, or at least seem much harder, because you don't have context, you may not have the foundational knowledge, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed and say, oh, I'm too dumb for this, or I don't understand this, or this is too much for me. And I want to kind of try to get rid of that kind of thinking, because that happens to everybody. No matter what stage you are in your career, there's always something new to learn, and I guarantee you most people feel that way, at least in the beginning. But if you're able to power through that feeling, for me, to do that is to use these kinds of examples, then I think that's the bigger lesson here, is to try to find what works for you. Coming down, maybe not as silly, maybe you need something a little bit more structured. Another thing that I like to share is depending on how you learn best, it's completely okay for you to find the medium that works for you. For a lot of people, visual examples work really well. For other people, you really need someone to pair program, sit down with them, show them line by line, this is what is happening, and explain it to them. For other people, blog posts are what really work for them. And even among the different things that you have to learn, different mediums work for different things. So that's one thing that I have learned so far in my career, is that when I'm about to learn something new, I really try to find either an author or someone that writes in a way that I understand, or I just keep going through. The internet is a really big place. It's a good and a bad thing, but it's a good thing because there should be enough content out there that you find either an author that resonates with you and explains things in a way that you understand, or you find a particular way something is taught that works with you. And so, yeah, it's kind of a very long-winded answer to say that's how this talk even came about. Is I think it's a very much more approachable way to kind of start learning about something like durable functions.
Perfect. It is. I think this really touches upon. I'm super passionate about how to teach and how to teach to myself and as well as others on like complicated topics, and how to really kind of make them simpler and more approachable to everyone. And now that we've kind of talked through what are the kind of learning methods that one can use to kind of boost up your learning. So then on the other side of the coin, would you have any advice to the people who are in more maybe more senior, more experienced position, and then they are the ones who are teaching their colleagues or anyone else these things? So other than using food, methodologies, or is anything else, or is that the best one to use, or anything like that that you think that is good trick or tip to use?
So as a developer advocate for MongoDB, I'm on the other side of that coin as well, right? Which is to create content that is going to be consumed by all kinds of audiences. So the thing that I see the most, and that is a struggle for a lot, is when we get to a certain point, it doesn't have to be a senior in a career, but it could just be someone who's just very knowledgeable in a particular topic. You kind of lose that sense of what it was like to be a beginner. You kind of start assuming there's a base level foundation that everybody that you are speaking to, writing for, creating sample apps for, to teach them. There's a lot of like nuanced and built-in knowledge that you assume of people, and that's something that even for me was very difficult to kind of overcome, because as you learn it, it becomes second nature to you, right? So you kind of write in that way. And what I've noticed is as you start to accommodate more and more audiences, especially if you're geared towards beginners or you're writing about something new, I find it's always better to be simpler, sometimes to the point where people are like, really, that's very simple, everybody can understand that, but that's a very harmful assumption. The simpler you can make it, the better you can build on top of it. And that works for anybody, no matter which person that you are teaching to. If you can start out simply, if you can lay out that foundation, if you can even get them to say, oh, that's so easy, I understand that, like, okay, yeah, that of course that makes sense, then you're on the right track. Then you can start to introduce more concepts. Then you can start to use acronyms a little bit more liberally, because you've laid that foundation. You've spelled out what the acronym means first. And so, as I talk about this and, as people are listening, you might think these are all kind of obvious things that you would think about. But in the midst of it, there's still a lot of documentation out there, a lot of blog posts, even a lot of video tutorials that have these kinds of things built in. And you're left wondering, what does that mean? Or what does this acronym mean? Or what is the goal? Or what is the point? A lot of those questions tend to come up. And so as a teacher, as somebody who's trying to teach, I think the goal is always to strive for trying to explain something in as simple of a way as possible, and then to build up on that and get more intermediate and advanced.
Perfect, really great. And kind of continuing from this, we had Adi Polak talking with us before about developer advocacy in these virtual times when everything is kind of virtual, nothing's in person anymore. How have you experienced all of these changes from the kind of more in person to the virtual, and then the lockdowns and everything that's happening right now?
I'm sure I'm like most people. I very much miss the travel. I miss going and meeting other developers, talking about how they solve their problems, and of course eating all of the food in all of their respective countries. But yeah, I don't think there's anything I can say that is different from what most people feel. I suffer from Zoom fatigue as well. The things that I'm finding myself considering now is, if it's going to be a virtual event, how are you making this different? How are you making it engaging, not just for me, but for the speakers? Because, if somebody is at home having to take care of kids, or having to do, to watch their pets or do something, and they're already at their computer most of the time, most of the last year, what draw do you have to make this kind of event even more interesting or worth it? And one of the best highlights that I still have from the lockdown period of conferences I did a conference that was held inside the Animal Crossing game. And so that was very novel. That was exciting. That was something I said, no matter what, I want to make sure I write an amazing abstract so I get accepted into this talk, because I want to speak at something like this. And it did very well. And it was very difficult to manage slides and my Nintendo Switch to move my character at the same time, so it looks like I was talking in game and all of that. But it was a very fun experience. So if anything, if there's any positive thing that comes out of that, it's to see those kinds of creative ideas come up. because there are good things to having a lot of things online, right? The obvious ones are a lot of people who may not have had the chance to come to conferences are now able to get this content and connect with these developers via Slack or wherever in YouTube chat. So those are all great. But if you can add that cherry on top of making it super interesting and very different, then I think that just makes it better for everybody. So yes, I miss it. It looks positive. I'm hoping. I see a lot of conferences are possibly going in person towards the end of the year, but I'll cross my fingers and hope everything gets much, much better. I'm aiming for maybe early next year when it's truly safe for everybody.
For sure. I think the Animal Crossing DevOps conference was really a highlight, at least in my kind of lockdown times as well. It was amazing when I heard about it the first time. Really, really great stuff. So maybe continuing from there, you've done a lot of courses for LinkedIn Learning as well. So you're no longer kind of recording, I guess, in the Santa Barbara studio or whatnot. Has that kind of experience changed a lot? And have you liked it? Did you like the in-person version more, or how did it go?
Oh, yes. The in-person version will never, you can't replace it. Just like conferences, you can't replace the feeling you get from, gauging your audience and talking to people in the hallway and all of that stuff. That's not replaceable. And in the same fashion, recording at the LinkedIn Learning Studios is very nice. All the people are very motivated, love their job, love what they do, and I do miss it. It's very fun to be around people who like what they do and are very good at their job. And there's also an inside joke there. There's a very, very good coffee cart that's going around that studio, and it's become kind of a thing. So if you go there, there's a coffee cart. There's a lady named June who just sells really amazing coffee to all of the employees there, including any of the authors who may be recording at that time. And I miss that coffee as well. It was very, very good. But to replace that, or at least at the time being, it's similar to now. They kind of just send you a kit to record at home. So it's not the same, but it's still something. And at least they're very, very helpful when it comes to, making sure your audio is okay, making sure your setup is correct and you're lit correctly and all of that. So all of that support and help and friendliness from the LinkedIn Learning team is still there. You just happen to not be in person.
Perfect. Really great things. Now the producers are telling us it's time to wrap up, unfortunately. It's been really great talking with you. On our behalf, obviously, super thank you for doing this. And also thank you as well, because I understood that you did a session with Global Azure Austria as well. So you kind of had a double role here.
Yes.
So really great. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me and inviting me. And this is always a very fun event. And thank you both for doing a great job hosting.
Thank you so much.
All right. We're nearly at time, aren't we, Annie?
Yes, we are just about to do our final comments, recap, maybe something reminders, but we are nearing the end of the day, that's for sure. Only a few minutes left, maybe. But yeah, we've had a really eventful day, feature track today. At least I'm very beat. It's been a lot of content, a lot of stuff in a short time. Hopefully everyone has enjoyed their time. We've gone, just as a quick recap of what's happened so far. Well, we kicked off. We had then a really great microservices session. Then we had the On the Couch with Barry session with the really great back and forth with Jeremy and Barry as well. And from there, really great story about impactful mentorship. And then we went to the great people of Global Azure Latin America. And then we talked with Adi about cloud advocacy in the virtual world. And then we had a great session with Leon about Azure Portal Q&A. And then the final session that's just finished with Adrian about understanding durable functions, what was really great as well. Really enjoyed everything so far. So what has been your favorite moment, Rick, so far from the stream?
You mean apart from being called a low-rank Gandalf the Grey by Barry? So I've got to say I've really enjoyed today because it's been a different kind of content than normally I get a chance to do. Normally I'm doing a session in a conference and I do slides for 45 minutes and then I disappear. it's lovely to have a conversation with people, isn't it? And there have been some really nice conversations, and I think we've managed to take some common themes across the whole day, like how things have changed under COVID, like where we see things going in the future. I think we've got some really important topics that we've discussed as well. The mentorship with Elena and Elder, and just throwing out the Global Azure Buddy program as well as a promo. If Carl wants to throw the link up on there, depending how quick he is. And I think just the energy as well has been the memorable thing for me. You know, that the energy of Barry, the energy of Leon, that guy could power a country. You know, it's been just fun. And obviously the pleasure of co-hosting with yourself, Annie. It's been a really, really lovely day for me. How about you? What have you enjoyed?
Yeah, it has been a really lovely time as well. A really great time, honestly, I have to say. I would really honestly have to say that my favorite part of the whole track has been the kind of interactions with people, kind of in the same thought as you said. But it's been really lovely to have a lot of Q&A sessions as well. And I do have to say that we have really great producers on the back end as well, and interacting with them has been one of my favorite parts as well. If our producers want to really quickly show themselves and show themselves to the world, that would be really lovely. Perfect. Here they are, the wonderful producers, the people who actually make all of this magic happen. Do you want to say anything, or do you want to continue producing?
Still work to do.
Yeah, it was really great. Really enjoyed it, all the sessions, and you were really fantastic hosts as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to you guys as well. It has been a great day.
It might have been a great day, but we're not done yet, are we, Annie? I mean, Global Azure is 3 days of content, whilst we might be about to actually have a pause and have a cup of tea. The content continues. So how about we tell people how they can find out what's still going on over the next day and a half or so?
Yeah, there's a lot of great worldwide sessions coming up. Do you have anything that you want to mention about them, or do you want to?
So I think we should definitely remind people about our friends in Global Azure Latam. They've got, I think they said 6 tracks coming up tomorrow. There are events running in Spain, but then there are individual creators who have got their own sessions, and you should absolutely go to our website. You should take a look at the worldwide sessions section of the site. Punch in the kind of things you're interested in. Have a look at the different levels of sessions. As we've said before, all of the information is in your time zone. We pick that up from your browser, so we'll show you what's going on in your time zone. And there's a little button that I believe is ticked by default, so we'll hide content that's already happened. Now, that doesn't mean that content is lost forever. It is largely up to the individual speakers. A lot of people are recording their sessions. A lot of stuff is going to be on YouTube. So have a look, follow the links, see what the speakers have been tweeting about how they're making stuff available. And also, that's a good segue for us. We will be making the recordings of this featured track available on the Global Azure YouTube channel, won't we, Annie?
Yes, we will. And it's going to be there available for everyone to view afterwards. If you missed any session or you want to recap and you want to kind of brush up on some of the reports about it. And I do want to kind of mention as well that even though this has been a really nice time, as Rick mentioned, the worldwide sessions are really maybe the place to be. Honestly, that's a really great content, as mentioned before in here, over 500 sessions. So I think everyone can find something from there that they really like. But then after we are done with most of the sessions, programs continue after our tomorrow as well. But towards the end of Global Azure, we have a wrap-up session with me and Rick tomorrow coming up. So we will try our best to wrap up this huge, big monster of over 500 sessions. Let's see how we succeed. Only time will tell, and you can tune in tomorrow to find out what that is all about. And before we say our final thank yous for today, a quick reminder on a lot of the interesting Badger things that we have also available, as well as kind of for you guys to check out. So by using this QR code, you can really get to finding about how you can get your learner badge in there. And then we also have a 30 days Learn It challenge from Microsoft as well. Really great things there. And then the second learner badge that you get will actually give you this amazing virtual background that I'm using here. Really great. I've enjoyed using it today a lot. It's really nice. So the code and the instructions are available for signed in users at our site, so globalazure.net, and there you navigate to the swag area in there. And this is limited to only the first 2,000 attendees. But yeah, a lot of great things that you can get. You can claim your learner badge, you can get your 30 days Learn It, and then you can get the virtual background and another badge from here as well. So a lot of great stuff to continue your Global Azure journey with. Then to wrap up before the final graphics start rolling in, very much a thank you from my side, and I think a thank you from all of the people from the producers and anyone else who's connected with Global Azure. But really thank you from me for tuning in and listening to today with all of us. So it's been lovely.
Absolutely. So a quick reminder, Mugs of Azure, Carl read my mind and threw the little thing on the bottom of the screen. And also I mentioned the giveaways earlier on. We'll be looking at people who've been active in the chat channels on YouTube and Twitch. And thank you to those people. You've really sort of made our day with some of those comments. We'll be looking at people who've been posting under the Global Azure hashtag on Twitter, and people who've been sharing pics of their favorite beverage with the Mugs of Azure hashtag. And we'll pick 5 winners to receive a combination physical and virtual swag pack, which we hope to announce on the wrap-up show, the highlight show tomorrow. To call out on that, it's at 8 a.m. Pacific or 4 p.m. London, UK time. Again, if you look at the website, it'll translate that into the time zone of your own choosing. And we really hope to see you then. Big thanks to everybody that's joined, everybody that's talked to, everybody that's poked fun at my hair. Thank you. Yes, I know. And I think with that, Annie, do you want to close us down and let Carl hit the big red button that ends the stream?
Yeah, really nice. Thank you for all the reminders. I think we're all set. And we can say thank you to everyone and see you tomorrow and in the worldwide sessions.